Welcome into Fantasy Baseball today, and welcome to the Wild West. You are listening to this on Wednesday, March 13th. I am Frank Stampfl, joined by Scott White and Chris Towers. Today on the show, we have ourselves another live mock draft. This time, 12-team head-to-head categories, what I have dubbed the Wild West of fantasy baseball. And we've got the standard 5x5 categories: batting average, runs, home runs, RBI, and steals. On the pitching side, ERA, whip, wins, strikeouts, and saves. One of each infield position, 3 outfielders, 2 utility spots, no corner, no middle, 2 starting pitchers, 2 relief pitchers, and 4 pitcher spots, which can either be starting pitchers or relievers. So that's where it kind of turns into the Wild West, and I'm sure we'll see some of that throughout the course of this draft. Weekly lineups, 25 inning minimum. Where is everybody drafting today? Chris is picking 3rd. Lucky guy. I am 6th, and Scott is 9th. We will be live for the entirety of this draft on YouTube, and it will be broken down into a 2-part podcast on the audio side. Scott, without further ado, let's fire it up.
Let's start it up here. Jake Holland with the first pick. I have a prediction who it might be.
You know, I have to say, on yesterday's podcast, I made a point of saying that I haven't picked first in any of our drafts yet, and that I had some strategies I wanted to try out from the number 1 spot. And I know Scott, he claims he does the random draft order.
No,
I know he doctors these things all the time. He's waiting, and somehow I never get the first pick. Scott gets the first pick 70, 80, 90% of the drafts we do. Frank gets the first pick like 40% of the time, and 0 times Chris Towers has had the first pick.
I thought you had the first pick before.
I'm not mad about it. I'm not mad. It's actually funny to me.
I did decide it was your turn to go the first of the 3 of us in this one, which is why you're picking 3rd. But anyway, we're missing picks with all these petty grievances. And so after Ronald Acuna was Mookie Betts. That's interesting. And then Julio Rodriguez. So that's the first time I think in a categories league we've seen Mookie
Betts
on
deck
go as high as 2nd. And what's changed is that he's now going to be the Dodgers opening day shortstop rather than their second baseman. Already has 2nd eligibility. Is going to be picking up shortstop too within the first week of the season. And so I would guess that was part of J.R. Fenton's incentive for taking him over Julio Rodriguez, who went 3rd, and then Bobby Witt, who went 4th.
But in this format in particular, I guess this format, more eligibility matters less than in a standard head-to-head points. Probably in a roto league, I guess it matters more less because you have 3 spots that you can put a guy in besides their primary position, or 2, I guess, middle infield and corner infield in the infield. Mm-hmm. But here you have that extra utility spot. So that flexibility is a little less important, I would say.
Yeah, I would agree. And I want to elevate Betts past Julio Rodriguez and Bobby Witt based on that, but we may see that happening more. And I think the deeper the league, the more valuable that is. This is not an especially deep league, 12 teams, smaller lineups, going to be 276 players drafted. So I wouldn't have done it. But anyway, that's what happened. Betts 2, Julio Rodriguez 3, Bobby Witt 4, and then a few interesting picks after that, Frank.
Yes, all the Dodgers are going. Shohei Ohtani at the 5th pick. I took Freddie Freeman, Corbin Carroll, and then Kyle Tucker. Wanted to touch on Ohtani in this format because there are 2 utility spots, which does change, I guess, your strategy a little bit. It opens up a little bit more flexibility. You can obviously draft 2 of those util-only players throughout the course of the draft. You could take Ohtani, you could take Ozuna, Eloy Jimenez. Well, not all of them, I guess, but you could take 2 of them if you wanted. And I was going through the box scores earlier. Shohei Ohtani on Tuesday went 3 for 4 with his 2nd home run. He's 11 for 19. He's batting .579. He's got a steal this spring. And I kind of feel like after he had the surgery, we said, hey, if he looks like Shohei Ohtani come spring, he probably should just go earlier in the first round again. Is that what's happening, or do you think it's only because of this extra util spot?
I think it's mostly because of the extra util spot. And I get it. I mean, when you can draft out in this Yahoo style head-to-head categories lineup, you can draft Ohtani, and you're not prevented from them taking a Marcelo Zuner or Eloy Jimenez or who are the others?
Byron Buxton, but he'll get
JD Martinez or even a second first baseman.
Mhm.
If it's not, it doesn't create the lineup building difficulty that usually comes with taking Shohei Ohtani with your first or sometimes even second round pick. So if that's not an issue, then he probably is a mid first rounder.
And I feel like where the second utility especially comes in handy is obviously, there are 6 fantasy relevant util only players to open the season. It's nice. You can take Eloy Jimenez 200th overall or wherever he usually goes. For me, it's more, let's say I take Matt Olson in the first round, and then I get to the third round and Vlad Guerrero Jr. has slipped far enough that he's available. It becomes a lot easier to actually pull the trigger on that when you still have a utility spot to play with in your roster.
But Shohei Ohtani does look like Shohei Ohtani, so I just did want to make that point. I know there is always risk of the elbow popping up and I guess being a problem once again, but so far so good. The guys looked awesome. After I took Freddie Freeman, mentioned Corbin Carroll, Kyle Tucker, Scott took Fernando Tatis, then Juan Soto, Spencer Strider, Trey Turner, and Aaron Judge. I did wonder, Scott, if after talking yesterday, you would take Spencer Strider just to try it out on a draft and see how it would work out, but that would not be the case.
No, I'm not that interested in trying it out. I'd be more likely to do it in a categories league like this than in a points league. I actually think the advantage for taking a Strider is significantly less in a points league. He can dominate strikeouts in this format, particularly if Garrett Cole's hurt, and you need the ratios to be more stable than you do in a points league where ratios don't matter, at least not in a direct way. So now I was fine passing him up and getting Fernando Tatis at 9th overall. I'm sure Chris likes that. I do want to talk about the Aaron Judge pick at 13 though, because I wondered if he would go for a discount based on what we learned about him here on Tuesday. Didn't happen in this draft, 13th overall.
Yeah, so Aaron Judge, which we learned had an MRI done on his abdomen on Monday and will not swing a bat until later this week. And Brian Hoke, who covers the Yankees for MLB.com, said it's not an oblique issue. He asked Aaron Judge, it's not an oblique. It's still an abdomen. So it
sounds like an abdominal issue, right? Like,
yeah.
I don't know when, I don't need to get into that, but yeah, like yesterday they were talking like it was just general soreness in spring training, which is understandable. These guys are getting back into game shape. And so I didn't think much of it. He was taking a couple days off from workouts. We come to find out it's an MRI Judge is actually happening on his midsection. Like that sounds like something specific is going on and something that could potentially sideline him for weeks. So I am, hopefully tomorrow we find out something more concrete on both Garrett Cole and Aaron Judge, but I am definitely on the verge of moving both out of the first, second round range.
I've already moved Cole out of the first round, well out of that range. Judge is still, I think, 16th for me. The Cole one, though, like that, there's all this talk like they're going to get like a second and a third opinion. And like, not to try to predict the future, but I feel like generally if the first and second opinion are your elbow's perfect, you're not going for a third opinion,
right?
I mean, I don't know.
Acuna did get a second opinion when he got a good first opinion, so it could just be an abundance of caution situation with a very important asset of theirs.
It's really just it's the third opinion. If he was just getting a second opinion, I wouldn't question it.
Okay,
but once you start bringing, that's too many cooks.
That's too many opinions. Okay.
Yes, and while we're talking about the Yankees and Garrett Cole, unlikely to be ready for opening day. Did not have the results of that MRI yet. And Big Bob Nightingale, who has given us many reports over the years, reported that the Yankees have re-engaged in talks for Dylan Cease. Whether or not you want to believe that, I'll leave that up to you. I have moved Garrett Cole down to 99th overall because, frankly, I don't know what to do with him, but I didn't want him anywhere high on my draft board in this draft, and so I lowered him a lot. After Aaron Judge went, we see Bryce Harper, Jose Ramirez. Scott took Matt Olson for the hashtag brand, Yordan Alvarez, and Austin Riley. And I am going to go ahead and take the top player on my board, Rafael Devers. And Chris and I were talking beforehand. I took Freddie Freeman in the first. I took Devers in the second. I might lean into a punt stolen bases strategy in this head-to-head categories format and see how it turns out. But based on Freeman and Devers, I think, I've already kind of laid the foundation for doing that if I want to. Corbin Burns went one pick later. Scott, I assume it was a pretty easy pick for you taking Matt Olson 16th overall.
Yeah, he was the top guy on in my queue, and probably would have been if I was picking 13th, So to get him at 16th, I think especially in this format, the head-to-head categories format, where you're having the roto competition, the 5x5 roto competition, but in short 1 week bursts. And I feel like players who can absolutely dominate in a category, no matter what category it is, are of so much more interest to me in this format, because like if you got a 20 steal guy, I know Matt Olson's a home run guy. Okay, let's call it a 25 homer guy. You can't count on even getting one home run from that guy in any particular week. Matt Olson, he's going to make an impact in that category probably every week, and in some weeks he's going to just like win the whole round for you. So I find those guys especially valuable rather than the jack of all trades types, those real category monsters. I tend to gravitate toward them in this format.
After I took Rafael Devers, Corbin Burns went, Pete Alonso. Chris, you took Francisco Lindor, then Marcus Semien, Ellie De La Cruz, and Jose Altuve at the turn. What do you guys think of that turn? Acuna, Ellie, Jose Altuve.
Well, Ellie kind of fits what I was talking about, just for stolen bases instead of home runs.
Yeah.
I mean,
it could be home runs too.
The thing with both with this approach now is you just don't take another stolen base guy, right? Without Acuna and Acuna and De La Cruz, and even Altuve will chip in 20-ish.
Sure. That's Jake Holland picking.
Yeah, that's conservatively 140 stolen bases, 120 stolen bases for your team.
Yeah.
You probably, you can't draft another. I mean, you can obviously, but like
you're probably going to get some stolen bases just by accident, but there's no need to take a player because I'm taking this guy for the steals,
Yes.
After Jose Altuve, Zach Wheeler, and Chris, you were up. You had Julio Rodriguez, Francisco Lindor, and just made your pick.
Yeah, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. I've talked a lot about Corbin Burns this year, and I was really hoping. I don't think I've drafted him so far this season, and he went a couple picks before my pick. Then Pete Alonso, who was my next best player, went. So I took Francisco Lindor there in the second round. Technically, I have Ozzie Albies ahead of Vladimir Guerrero, but that would be kind of three jack of all trades guys in Julio Rodriguez, Francisco Lindor, and Ozzie Albies. And I'd rather get a guy in Vladimir Guerrero who I think, like Scott was talking about, has the potential to, really carry you in home runs, and RBI in a way that Albies won't. Now, maybe runs, but even then, he's more of a good player everywhere.
Now, I find this interesting because it's 2 days in a row you've talked about Vladimir Guerrero, and you've talked about him in terms that would suggest you don't believe what happened to him in 2023, 2022 is legit. You're still thinking of him more as that. I mean, obviously the 2021 48 homer season would be the best case outcome, but you think he's closer to that player than what we've seen the last 2 years? Because the last 2 years he wasn't really dominant.
I think the upside is there. I don't think it's the likeliest outcome, but Vlad is definitely one of those players where if you're playing 12 leagues or whatever it is, like I am, I want him on at least one of them because I still think the ceiling is incredibly high. And you look at last year, he had the highest launch angle of his career, right in line with 2021. The quality of contact, okay, it wasn't quite as good as 2021, but it was very, very good. It was the second best of his career. That wasn't reflected in the overall numbers. His expected WOBA was 378, by far the second best of his career. Actual WOBA 340, down from 2022, basically in line with 2020. I think he's going to be better this year than he was either of the past two seasons, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. So I am willing to draft him with the hope that he can be that difference-making hitter.
Worth mentioning with Vlad, I know he's been dealing with a knee thing throughout spring, and the Blue Jays are kind of playing it cautiously with him right now. Doesn't sound like anything to be worried about, but something obviously to pay attention to when you have to use a 3rd round pick on a player like that. So keep that in mind. After you took Vlad, Ozzy Albies, Luis Castillo, and yeah, I don't think I'm going to punt stolen bases because I just got Michael Harris in the 3rd round. We spoke about it yesterday and on previous shows. He looks so good this spring. I think he's going to bat, 6th in that Braves lineup. So hopefully the counting stats are better. And I think he can go. I don't think it's crazy for him to go like 25-25 this year for Michael Harris with a really good batting average. So
it's kind of hard to punt steals now because there's so many sources of them. I mean,
I thought about
that's
taking
not to say you have to get 0 steals if you're punting steals, but
Corey Seager would have fit it perfectly if I wanted to keep on, and that's who I was debating. So.
Yeah, that was the very next pick. Yeah. Now, so you took Harris at 30, Corey Seager 31, Luis Robert 32. Then at 33, I took Yoshinobu Yamamoto, and obviously Garrett Cole's still out there. I've said before, until this is resolved and we know one way or another, I'm not touching Cole until round 6. But by his removal from the first couple rounds, makes it so that drop off in the middle of round 3 happens just a little bit sooner, where all the MVP caliber bats are gone. And that's when I usually pivot to pitcher. And that's what happened here. I mean, Gunnar Henderson was still there, and he's kind of on the fringe for me with those MVP caliber bats that requires some amount of projection to say he fits in that group, but I could see it. Having taken Fernando Tatis and Matt Olson with my first 2 picks, though, I thought I should go for pitcher instead. So I went with Yamamoto. Close call between Yamamoto and Pablo Lopez. I think if it was a points league, I'd go Pablo Lopez, but I like Yamamoto's chance of dominating an ERA and whip, even if maybe he doesn't have as many 2-start weeks as Pablo Lopez will have.
Whoa! All right, let's talk about this latest pick. Catch people up. Corey Seager went, Luis Robert, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Kevin Gausman. Now, I don't know if Doc Eisenhower is just trying to create content here. Have us talk about his team on the podcast. Wyatt Langford, 35th overall.
I know he's a big fan, but yeah.
I'm pretty certain he could have got him at the 5-6 turn if he wanted to wait. I guess there are no guarantees. The ADP, I checked today. I think it's over the past 3 days. It's inside of the top 100 now. So, 95 for Wyatt Langford. He continues to climb. I said yesterday he was leading spring training in OPS. I don't know if that's still the case, but obviously he's up there.
I believe Shohei Ohtani has passed him.
I know Zach Geloff is up there too. He's looked really, really good. Langford's looked great. And I do think it's increasingly likely that he'll be up on the opening day roster. But even with that, there's no way, right?
Yeah. So late last spring, we saw Corbin Carroll start to creep into the late round 3 range in categories leagues. But I do think it was a different situation for a couple reasons. One, Carroll had the potential to dominate in stolen bases, and anybody who can give you what ultimately ended up being 50 plus steals has it's hard to let them slip past round 3 in a roto league. So you could attach that kind of stolen base upside to Carroll. I don't think you can for Wyatt Langford. He's going to steal some bases, but not nearly that many. The other is that we had already seen Corbin Carroll hold his own in the majors late in 2022. He got an audition with the Diamondbacks. So we weren't coming in totally blind with him as far as facing major leaguers goes. So I think this is, I don't think this is something we're going to see often with Wyatt Langford. It still seems more likely to me that it could happen to Jackson Chourio because he is that elite base stealer like Corbin Carroll is.
Into the 4th round we go. At the turn, Gunnar Henderson and Zach Gallen. Doc is back on the clock just for fun. And this is an impossible task for us to do. But what do you think Wyatt Langford's 90th percentile outcome is this year, right? Like, just major upside case for him. Is it 40 homers, 20 steals? Like, it's so hard to say because we have such a limited
sample. A little high.
Yeah. 30-15 maybe.
Like Gunnar Henderson was last year, maybe a little more batting average.
Yeah, so he stole 12 bases in 44 games last season. He hit 10 home runs. Now, obviously, we don't know, what to extrapolate from that, but by all accounts, he is very fast. Maybe not elite speed, but plus speed.
And we should mention with the Rangers, they did not run as much last year under Bruce Bochy. So,
yeah, I think a realistic upside case for Wyatt Langford is probably something like 290, 35 homers, 25 steals. It's a really hard question to answer, but I think that's a realistic case. But it's also like he's not. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think he's as good of a hitting prospect as Vladimir Guerrero Jr. was when he made his debut. And Guerrero was kind of just an average player.
Yeah, it kind of was disappointing as a rookie.
So that's the thing to keep in mind, is that even really, really good hitting prospects, when I did that analysis of like the top prospects and how they've been really, really valuable for fantasy in their rookie season, especially the ones drafted inside the top 100, it's primarily guys who ran a lot. Like Victor Robles was like a $15 player his rookie season. It's not because he was a great hitter. It's because he stepped on the field and immediately was like top 15 in stolen bases.
And I don't know what to expect from Langford as far as that goes.
Yeah.
He didn't run much in college. Yes, 12 steals in 44 minor league games. You pace that out. That's a big number. Doesn't have a stolen base attempt this spring. It's so much inclination with stolen bases, and I don't know how inclined he's going to be to run.
I mean, the thing with college and with this spring is like, has he had many opportunities to steal a base yet? Everything's a home run. You can't steal a base. You can't steal a base when you're jogging around them.
It hasn't been everything, but yeah. I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know what to expect from him for stolen bases.
I think it's an open
25,
question.
like you said. I think that's probably the high end, though.
Yeah.
And to be clear, that's not what we're expecting from Wyatt Langford. Just making the extreme upside case for him. What happens if everything goes right for him this year? Catch you up on the fourth round. After Zach Gallen, we saw Paul Goldschmidt, Bo Bichette. Scott took Pablo Lopez.
Yeah.
Tarek Skubal and Tyler Glasnow. I wanted either of those guys. Again, I think looking for players who could provide extremes. I think both Skubal and Glasnow in this format could just dominate the strikeout category every week. But it was not for me, apparently. Both of them went right before my pick. So I took Randy Arozarena. I'm going to try and wait on pitching a little bit here and see how it turns out. Randy is my my second outfielder, the fourth hitter on my team. I've got Freeman, Devers, Harris, and Arozarena. So a little bit of everything. Again, I'm not sure that's like the most ideal way to build in this format, but we'll see how it turns out. After Randy Arozarena, Mike Trout, Logan Webb, and Chris, you are on the clock. We'll get back to your pick in a second. Scott, tell me why you went with Pablo Lopez, two starting pitchers in your third and fourth round picks.
Well, yeah, remember the previous pick, I was debating Pablo Lopez and Yoshinobu Yamamoto. So I was shocked that Lopez was still there. Usually I speak these things into existence when we're streaming these drafts live, So I didn't have much to think about. I did consider CJ Abrams because he is one of those players of extremes and he just goes off the board to Chris. And so, to get that big infusion of stolen bases every week gives me a better chance of competing in the category. But having two legitimate aces at the top of my staff, there's four categories that they can contribute to. And I think that gives me a nice advantage and allows me to focus on hitters more over the next few rounds.
Let's take our first break. When we return, we'll ask Chris about that CJ Abrams pick right after this.
And the crowd goes crazy.
Welcome back in. After I took Randy Arozarena, Mike Trout, Logan Webb, Chris took CJ Abrams, Cody Bellinger, and George Kirby to finish out round 4. The first pick of round 5 is Cole Reagans, who actually got crushed on Tuesday by the Colorado Rockies. Don't think it matters too much. Jackson Chourio. Oh my gosh. Right. Is this are we in a dynasty league draft? What is happening?
50th overall for Chourio. Yeah, that's the highest I've seen for him too.
Yeah.
Have we reached that point? And we just found out Jackson Merrill is making the Padres opening day roster. Obviously, their opening day roster is much sooner than every other team's. So we're maybe feeling a little more confident in some of these prospects. Not that Jackson Chorio or Wyatt Langford has officially been named to the roster, but they haven't been sent to minor league camp the way so many prospects already have. And so maybe people are feeling emboldened to take them earlier than ever now. Or maybe it's just two oddballs in this draft. Who knows?
I think that's probably the more likely scenario. It wouldn't surprise me if they continue to rise a little bit, but being top 50 picks for either of them, I think it's probably not warranted, but I could be wrong. Chris, let's talk about your picks. You took CJ Abrams in round 4. You took Adolis Garcia in round 5. I think both are awesome picks. I thought about taking either one. Abrams, that massive steal total, but I did not. And you did. Talk to me about your team.
Yeah, I was trying to. I knew I was going to draft either Adolis Garcia or CJ Abrams with the 4th round pick, and knowing that there were 4 picks between them, I had to try to figure out which one was more likely to make it back to me. I ended up going with Abrams there, even though I already have a shortstop, so one of my utility spots is filled. But like we talked about earlier, this format offers you a little more flexibility in that regard. And with Abrams, I have the concerns about him, but he hasn't been on my bust list this year. I think the stolen bases alone are going to keep his value afloat. And I do believe in some of the changes he made as a hitter in the second half. Up the fly ball rate, up the quality of contact metrics without sacrificing contact. In fact, he actually made more contact in the second half. Both, his plate discipline improved, I guess is the best way to say it. He dropped his strikeout rate from 22% before the All-Star break to 16% in the second half. Walk rate up 4% to 6.4%. So I don't think CJ Abrams is a superstar hitter by any means, but I think he's good enough and has a pull-oriented swing that should help him maximize the power he does have. I think there's enough there that it's not just empty stolen bases. I think he's going to be a legitimately helpful player.
Yeah, he could hit, 260-ish. I mean, this was someone in Abrams that was widely regarded for his hit tool in the minors. So there is still a chance that he could improve and hit for a higher batting average. And obviously the speed is going to be awesome. Interested to see how the pitching staff turns out. But so far through 5 rounds, you've got Vlad, Lindor, Adolis Garcia, Julio, and CJ Abrams.
Yeah, I'm the only non-coward so far. I have not taken a starting pitcher. Frank, I know you said, oh, maybe I'll punt. You didn't. You took a pitcher in the 5th round. And it's fine. It's a pitcher's on my bust list, but that's fine. I'm not omniscient.
Yeah, so I took Freddie Peralta at pick 54 as my SP1. And again, just on that theme of looking for players of extremes in this format, he's going to get a lot of strikeouts. If nothing else, I know it was an inflated ERA in totality last year, but he was much better in the second half of the season. I think there is still a lot of upside with Freddie Peralta, but as you pointed out recently on Bust 2.0, Chris, I think a decent amount of downside with Freddie Peralta as well.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I struggle with him is, and this is more of a points worry, but he only averaged, after the All-Star break last season, 5.7 innings per start. That was with a 2.8 ERA and an exactly 1 whip. He just doesn't go deep into games. He gets enough strikeouts to make up for it for the most part, but yeah, it's hard for me to view that kind of pitcher as an ace. And he's drafted as like the 20th, 18th pitcher off the board. So,
After you took Adolis Garcia, Nolan Jones, Manny Machado, I took Peralta, then Aaron Nola, Kyle Schwarber, Royce Lewis, and there we get it. Garrett Cole, 58th overall. Scott, talk to me about those back-to-back picks. You took Royce Lewis, who I know was a breakout for you early in the offseason, but you said you never wound up with him. Well, here you go. You got him. And Garrett Cole, someone takes the plunge at pick 58.
So actually, I had Kyle Schwarber, who went 56, all queued up, was going to take him, had a plan. I was going to pair him with a high OBP guy the next round to kind of combat his one issue. Obviously, Schwarber's a guy who can dominate a category, home runs, and
he can dominate a category in another way.
Runs, too.
Well, I was talking about
in terms of dragging down batting average. Like I said, I had a plan that I was going to safeguard against that, but taking a high OBP guy next time. But didn't happen. So I wound up with Royce Lewis. And, 57th overall, that's fine. Haven't had an occasion to draft him yet. Not sure I've had a chance to pick 9th yet, so maybe that's why. But Garrett Cole going right after me, that's 58 toward the end of round 5. I have said with all the unknowns surrounding him right now, I wouldn't think about it till early in round 6. And I would not have thought about it if he made it to me for my pick in round 6, because in this particular draft, I already have 2 starting pitchers, Yoshinobu Yamamoto and Pablo Lopez. So it's not the time to take Garrett Cole when you're in that situation. I wonder if George Kurtz, he's the one who took Garrett Cole.
He's a Yankees fan. I can
He
tell you
has
that.
Kevin Gausman too, so he's doubling down on pitchers who are injured currently, which is interesting. But it is just a mock.
That's exactly right. After Garrett Cole, O'Neal Cruz and Nico Horner to finish out round 5, and the first pick of round 6, Blake Snell at pick 61, who we spoke about on yesterday's podcast a little bit, lowering him in the rankings. I did exactly that. I think I lowered him to around 85th overall here on Tuesday. So might be a touch high, but if he signs soon, maybe he could be ready by, I don't know, the second or third week of the season. We wait and see on Blake Snell. Framber Valdez is the next pick, 62nd overall. Scott, you were on deck. You were up. Max Fried was the next pick. And let's check in. I know you got the 2 starting pitchers. You just took Royce Lewis. You also have Matt Olson and Fernando Tatis. What are you thinking?
Oh, I'm thinking things I've never thought before, Frank.
Uh-oh.
I took Royce Lewis, had my first occasion to do that, and I'm going to take somebody else here who I've never had occasion to take. It's just a question of which someone else.
Is it a musical pick?
One is a catcher, one is a relief pitcher. I don't like to invest in either, but here we are in round 6 and the top choice at both. They're still available. And you know what? The fact that Devin Williams is currently banged up, seeing a spine specialist, for reasons that don't sound significant, but yeah, I'm going to take Josh Hader. I'm going to do it. I'm going to take the first closer in this draft.
That's not what I thought was happening either. I thought it was Edwin Diaz.
Oh, you thought it was going to be Diaz?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be fine too. They're in the same tier, but I have Josh Hader ranked higher. And I do think of the 3 major formats, head-to-head categories is particularly a daily format like Yahoo typically is. It's the one that rewards relievers the most, that there's the most incentive for investing in that position. So to get the best one around 6, that usually doesn't happen. And I'm going to need multiple, unlike a catcher. I'm only going to need 1 catcher. Everybody in the league is only going to need 1 catcher. I think there are 17 starting caliber catchers. I'm just not sure the advantage of taking Adley Rutschman, even though it's discounted on paper, 6th round. I don't think the advantage is enough to justify it as much as the Josh Hader pick.
And you didn't do it, Scott, but I did. Edwin Diaz, come on down. 67th overall. He is the 2nd pitcher on my team. And I do agree in head-to-head categories. That might be the format I am most likely to draft an elite closer at the right cost. I think 67th overall is totally fine.
Yeah, obviously a discount here, or else I wouldn't have done it.
After you took Josh Hader, Christian Yelich, and Adley Rutschman, so the other player that you were debating here, and then I took Edwin Diaz as mentioned. Let's check back on Chris's team. 5 hitters. What are we thinking, Chris? Is this the time to get a pitcher?
Maybe. We'll see. It's not my pick yet. There's two picks left. We'll see who goes. I have 2 players in my queue. Maybe one of them is a hitter. Maybe one of them is a pitcher. Who knows? It's impossible to say. I do want to point out with Adley Rutschman, because my Bust 2.0 article is coming out tomorrow. It'll be in the FBT newsletter, cbssports.com/newsletters to sign up. Rutschman is on my Bust 2.0 list, which we talked about last week, and not if he's the 66th pick. Like that one is because his ADP is like 39th or 40th, whatever it is right now. In the 60s, I love him. That's around where I have him ranked anyway. It's just like we said, and I'm going to pick a pitcher. I'm going to follow in both of your footsteps.
Look at
CBS gang loves relief pitchers. Famously, we always talk about how we want to be the first people on our drafts to take a relief pitcher. I took Yohan Duran. I did move Devin Williams down a little bit as a result of the back issue. So he's 79th for me. So he's kind of in the second tier of closers. So Duran was the top one left. If Edwin Diaz had been there, I absolutely would have taken him.
So
we'll see if the other guy.
I agree.
comes
Adley
back.
Rushman in round 6, if he lasts that long, it's fine. Would you have also taken an elite reliever over him in this scoring format? If it's a 2-catcher league, then I'd probably take the catcher. But since it's a 1-catcher league,
Yeah, I think I probably still would have taken Duran or Edwin Diaz if he was available ahead of Adley Rutschman there. Yeah.
After I took Edwin Diaz, Christian Walker, Josh Lowe, who we did get some news on here on Tuesday, he said that he's pretty much full go and is aiming to return to games Sunday or Monday. Scott, have you lowered Josh Lowe throughout this process dealing with the hip injury? Because I know he's someone that you were pretty excited about early in the offseason.
I hadn't lowered him because I was always under the impression he was going to be ready to go. And so if it sounds like he is, it's especially not a good time to lower him.
All right. After Josh Lowe, Yohan Duran to Chris, Logan Gilbert, and Tristan Casas. All right, another potential hype guy on the rise here. Not as high as some of those other prospects, but there is a lot of excitement around Tristan Casas this year. And then the first pick of round 7, Devin Williams, who went to see a spine specialist, I believe, over the weekend. So we're just kind of waiting to learn more. But if he's good to go, he obviously deserves to be one of the top 3 closers drafted. We just don't know for sure as of now.
And that was kind of curious the way that was reported, because it seemed like the team's own training staff said, okay, just rest a little while, you'll be fine. But Devin Williams himself was the one pushing to get the second opinion. So I don't know how that changes your view of it at all. We hopefully will have something more concrete from him soon, and we can say with more certainty what's going on. But I have a good feeling about how it's going to play out for Devin Williams, just based on what the team's own medical staff is saying.
After Devin Williams, JT Realmuto, and Jazz Chisholm to Chris, the homer.
Oh, yeah. Hey, all you cool cats.
I haven't played that sound drop in a long time.
Yeah, no, I had Jazz Chisholm and Yohan Duran in my queue when I made my last pick, and again decided to see if I could get one of them through, and worked out. I got both of them. This is working out okay for me so far.
All right. Well, a couple other picks after Jazz. Justin Steele, who I believe is on the mound right now as we are doing this podcast live on Tuesday night. And Brian Reynolds was the next pick, 77th overall. I am up. I've got 4 hitters: Freeman, Devers, Arozarena, Michael Harris. I've got 2 pitchers, Freddie Peralta and Edwin Diaz. And I think I want to take my SP2. It kind of feels like we're nearing the end of a tier here. And I'm going to go ahead and take Zach Eflin, much to the chagrin of one Chris Towers.
Good pick. I didn't think there was any chance he was going to make it back to me, but he was at the top of my queue for, 15 picks from now or whatever it was.
And I feel like Zach Eflin is a good pairing with Freddie Peralta. Maybe not injury-wise, because they do both have some injuries in their past, but just in terms of the skill set, Zach Eflin, not going to give you massive strikeouts, but a really good whip, should be solid ERA. Freddie Peralta, control has been a problem at times, so perhaps an elevated whip, but I think the strikeouts obviously are going to be really good, and just feels like a good pairing with those two. After Zach Eflin, Emmanuel Clase, Jesus Luzardo, and Scott, you are back up.
I was going to be tilting very hard because 2 of my top 3 hitters are third basemen. Alex Bregman, which is the especially eyebrow-raising one, and then also Nolan Arenado. And remember, I took Royce Lewis only to see O'Neal Cruz and Nico Horner, 2 other players I was considering, go off the board right after him before I got a chance to pick again. So I was going to be regretting that Royce Lewis pick greatly if Matt McClain wasn't still there. He was the other of the 3 hitters at the top of my rankings. I actually have a need for both a second baseman and a shortstop, so I could decide later where to put him. I could use some stolen bases. He's hopefully going to be a good source of those. He's back playing for the Reds, so I'm less concerned about his availability for the start of the season. I think this is a nice discount here at 81st overall, even though I think he's overrated in general, not when he's available at 81st overall.
And yeah, I do think that's a pretty good discount. 81st overall. This is kind of the bizarro Scott White draft. I feel like I don't.
It is.
I don't
Other
see
than Matt Olson.
players. Yeah. Yeah, true. Outside of Matt Olson. After Scott took Matt McLean, George Springer went to George Kurtz. I almost put those two names together, which
I thought you were going to say George Kirby.
it would have just been George Kurtz. But yeah, I assume George Kirby's way gone, but I didn't.
Yes.
I feel like I didn't announce his name. He went somewhere. My guess is probably in like the 4th round somewhere.
I forgot to cross him off, so let's make sure he was drafted.
He was.
Yeah, 48th overall.
Okay. We are nearing the end of round 7, and we're back to Doc, who took Wyatt Langford in round 3. Does he have another trick up his sleeve? We will find out in 5 seconds or less.
Just take Bregman. Come on.
Interesting group of hitters here. Bryce Harper, Nolan Arenado, O'Neill Cruz, Wyatt Langford, and Paul Goldschmidt. So
he just took Arenado, who you mentioned.
Yeah. 2 super young guys with a ton of hype, and then 2 old boring guys that nobody really wants, who I think are going to have bounce back seasons in Arenado and Goldschmidt. And then obviously Harper, lots of people want, and is also going to have a bounce back season, I think.
Mm-hmm. So Nolan Arenado was the pick, because Scott was name dropping and he gave out a bunch of players that are still available, but I'll forgive you this once. Yuri Perez and Alex Bregman at the turn, and we are into round.
Great value on Bregman there. My goodness.
Bregman, by the way, entering a contract year. There have been talks of an extension. Nothing has happened yet. But for those who care about contract years and the sort, Alex Bregman is one of those players. I do wonder. I don't think it'll happen, but there have been some talks that the Astros will run a little bit more this year under new manager Joe Espada. Apparently, they want to be more aggressive on the base paths. I don't know if that'll affect Bregman per se. I mean, maybe he chips in a few steals, but it could help someone like Altuve or Kyle Tucker. Already runs a lot. How much more can he actually run? But,
yeah, I mean, Bregman is really slow these days. 25th percentile in sprint speed.
I didn't know it was that bad.
It's all about the power for Bregman. There have been so many reports about him like pumping iron this offseason. I don't know. I'm trying to remember exactly. He was swinging like a weighted bat, and now his bat speed's up however many miles per hour. He wants to get back to hitting for power like he did in the late 2010s.
The 1 year.
Which I'm not sure if he understands. There was a little something called the juice ball era going on then. I don't know, but he seems to feel like he can get back to hitting 30 to 40 home runs. I don't think he will, but he's plenty valuable enough with everything else he does to be drafted in this round 6, 7, 8 range.
Yeah, and the thing is, in other drafts, not on CBS Sports specifically, because his ADP here is 68, he's closer to 100. On the other sites. So Bregman, at least relative to our drafts or the drafts that happen on our platform, a decent value here. Technically an overpay based on where he tends to go, at least in some of the other leagues.
Bregman has taken over as the face of the difference between a points league and a categories league.
OBP versus,
For years, I mean, Carlos Santana was such a standout in that way, where he was so good in a points league or OBP, and then not as valuable in the categories league. Not that Bregman is bad in this format; he's just so much better in a points league. We talked about him yesterday as a 3rd round pick in a points league, and in a categories league. You see what happens here. It's 7th, 8th round, this range here for Bregman, or based on ADP, even a little bit lower, around pick 100. After Alex Bregman, Grayson Rodriguez, Camilo Doval, and Scott, you took Ha-Sung Kim, who and here you go, you're racking up some steals now. But
yeah, that's ultimately what decided it for me. Okay. I mean, Ha-Sung Kim has stolen 3 bases this spring, so he still seems plenty inclined to run. That was one of the concerns after his 38 steal season last year. And I just feel like I have ground to make up in that category. Got Tatis in round 1, but then I didn't draft another base stealer until Matt McLean with my last pick. Maybe Royce Lewis will give me some, but I'm not counting on a lot there. I am counting on a lot from Kim. There are other second basemen who could provide a lot of steals. So I thought about waiting some more and falling back on like a Bryson Stott or a Zach Geloff or an Andres Jimenez. Maybe I should have. Maybe I'll come to regret that in the next couple rounds. And if I had done that, if I had passed up Kim, I could have either gone for another great closer at the time, Raisel Iglesias was still out there, Jordan Romano, or there's another player I'm considering, but I don't want to mention him because there's a chance he gets back to me in round 9.
Is that 3 of your busts on your team now? Do you have Lewis as a bust, or was that only Frank?
No, I have him as breakout.
Okay.
Yeah,
So it's only 2.
Okay.
It's only 2 of Kim and
the values were good on both. I agree.
Who was the other one? McLean, Kim and McLean, my middle infield.
Gotta say, guys, don't like drafting back-to-back with RJ White. This has been an unpleasant experience because he went ahead and took Bobby Miller 1 pick ahead of me. And so I will never forgive you, RJ. That not nice. After Scott took Hassan Kim, Raisel Iglesias, the aforementioned Bobby Miller, I took Dylan Cease, someone I don't typically take. I only had 2 starting pitchers.
Again, yeah, but he's going to be a Yankee, so.
Not if they're not willing to give up Spencer Jones, which that's everything I've heard so far. But again, a format of extremes. I wanted strikeouts. And again, I have, I think, a good whip specialist in Zach Eflin. But I probably will need another one between Dylan Cease and Freddie Peralta being on my team. Evan Phillips.
Actually, I do want to say Peralta's actually historically not a bad whip source. I think in the 3 seasons since he became like an everyday guy, he's been I think his worst whip was 1.1. He's actually been, despite having somewhat iffy command, a very good whip guy. So that's worth pointing out.
Mm-hmm. He does get more fly balls. So that is a fair point. Usually pitchers who get more fly balls don't give up as many hits, and as a result, they do have lower whips. After Evan Phillips, Jordan Romano, Chris, you took Gleyber Torres. That was the other player I was debating, so good pick by you. Andres Jimenez, Tanner Bybee, and we are into round 9. Chris, I believe do you have a starting pitcher yet?
0 SPs, baby.
Oh, I think I might know what you're doing.
Carlos Rodon, the ace.
There's no way to know what I'm doing.
Does it rhyme with Schmarlos Schmarmol?
No.
It might be.
Dylan Cease, for what it's worth. Not that hey, is Dylan Cease able to get strikeouts? It's not really a question. Does have 9 of them today. Or 7 in the first 3 innings of his start. I'm following along with that. Justin Steele has 9 in 4 innings today.
Jeez.
So,
all right.
That's been fun to watch.
I'm getting the feeling Cease is going to have a strong bounce back season. Not that he's going to have a low 2 ZRA again. I don't think he'll ever have a low 2 ZRA again.
You guys, I did it again. I had 2 players in my queue, 3 straight turns through my, wheel or whatever we call it. And I got both players each time. I'm very happy with how that has worked out.
William Contreras to Chris, who still does not have a starting pitcher. So we'll see how that turns out. Chris Sale was the first pick of round 9, by the way, followed by Zach Geloff, who I mentioned is having a monster spring so far. He's really good.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that. 4 home runs already for Geloff. It is spring training. It is the Cactus League.
He's just ahead of Miguel Andujar in OPS.
But it is encouraging from the perspective that he kind of caught everybody by surprise last year. And I think there was a lot of skepticism just because of that. So to see him just continue to pick up where he left off, even if it's only spring training, I think will put some people's minds at ease. And so he ends up going here ahead of Ketel Marte, Bryson Stott, and Andres Jimenez in a categories league. I'm not sure I've seen that yet. I'm not sure I've seen Geloff elevated to that level among second basemen. So that is what may be the start of a trend here as mock draft season continues.
Mm-hmm. Well, should I do something that I always hate that I do in previous drafts? I think I'm going to do it. And I'm going to take Will Smith, who seems like a good value at pick 102 in the 9th round. But in leagues with one catcher, I see Scott get, Mitch Garver in round 20, and I wind up kicking myself every time.
Always regret it. Yeah.
So we'll see if I regret it again today. But Will Smith, come on down, joining Freddie Freeman, Devers, Arozarena, and Michael Harris.
At this price, it's hard to complain, even if a good value. Because, we think Mitch Garver is going to be better. Well, this is a shallow format. Mitch Garver is going to cost a lot less. We don't think Mitch Garver is going to be better than William Contreras or Will Smith. It's just the relative value is better. But when Will Smith is going past 100 and what, 105th overall, 103rd overall.
I got him at 102.
His ADP is 77 overall. William Contreras is 83. So it's like, okay, Mitch Garver, maybe he'll be very good, but at a much deeper discount. I still think it's fine to get those catchers at this kind of discount here.
It's fine. I agree. I would have, if you hadn't taken William Contreras, I might have. But I probably wouldn't have, because Evan Carter was still there. And that's who I was hoping. That's who I was debating when it was between Ha-Sung Kim and in round 8, Evan Carter to fill my second outfield spot, which I've normally done by this point. But I hadn't in this one. So feeling the urgency in the outfield. Thankful Evan Carter made it back to me at 105. Evan Carter's probably going to be one of those jack of all trades types rather than dominating in any one thing. But I'm not saying you can't take those. And certainly when you're talking round 9 for a player who should have a lot of runs in RBI just by virtue of where he's batting and what lineup, I think I'm pretty excited about one. I'm getting pretty excited about Evan Carter overall.
Let's take our next break. And when we return, we'll catch you up on rounds 9 and 10 right after this.
2 big boys getting ready to play. Big being the operative word here. And here they come.
Welcome back in. Catch people up on some picks. Shane Bieber went at pick 100. Did want to mention he made another spring start here on Tuesday. Shane Bieber did, and looked much better this time out. 4 shutout innings with 4 strikeouts to 1 walk. I did not see any reports on the velocity. There was no stat cast in that game either, but it was a strong outing for Shane Bieber. After he went, Joe Musgrove, I took Will Smith, back-to-back second baseman, Ketel Marte and Bryson Stott, Evan Carter, Alexis Diaz, Jackson Holiday, Spencer Steer, and Teoscar Hernandez, the first pick of round 10. Jackson Holiday, pick 107 to, that's right, you guessed it, Doc Eisenhower, who will have a great team 3 years from now.
Maybe this year.
They might.
Maybe.
Have it this
There's
year.
a chance. I do want to point out with that, remember Ha-Sung Kim, I need steals. There's a lot of second basemen who could give them to me. Well, Zach Geloff and Bryson Stott both went before my next pick. Andres Jimenez is still out there. And maybe I'll grab him to fill one of my utility spots. We'll see. Let's see. Luis Ariz goes. So we're kind of, I don't know what people keep passing up Andres Jimenez. I'm a little surprised by that.
I do think it's worth talking about Jackson Holiday because there was a question in the chat, like what do we think his ADP should be? Like what do we think it should settle in? I would say probably around here, maybe a little lower. But the thing with Jackson Holiday, projections are not going to like him. So like when you draft him, your projections are not going to look great because he has a very, very limited sample size at the upper minors. He held his own at both AA and AAA, but it was like 54 games. He had 5 home runs and 4 stolen bases. Like the underlying stuff, the skill level stuff was good. The plate discipline was excellent at both levels, but I think it's fair to wonder how much of an impact he's going to make for fantasy as a 20-year-old, because it might be a little more of a jack of all trades, master of none type of profile, at least for fantasy. Like the vibe I get, and maybe this is wrong, but Dansby Swanson, when he was coming up as a prospect, remember it's easy to forget now, he was arguably the top prospect in baseball when Dansby Swanson got called up. And it took him a while. He wasn't as young as Jackson Holiday is, but it took him a while to really make a fantasy impact.
Yeah, no, I think that's all fair, and things that I've thought about Jackson Holiday as well. There's no doubting he's going to be a really, really good major leaguer. We all think, right? And so far, he's looked good in the spring. Jackson Holiday he is 10 for 31 with 2 doubles, 2 triples, a homer, 2 stolen bases. And honestly, he is a player that might profile better as a points league player too. Just really good OBP. Maybe like we don't see full on power this year, Chris, but a lot of that will be extra base hits, like doubles and triples.
It's a little bit like Adley Rutschman when he got called up, where he was a really, really good player right off the bat. But for fantasy, he was just okay because he didn't have the over the fence pop. The other thing to keep in mind with Jackson Holiday, having said all that, is he was 19 years old last year. He's 20 this year.
Right.
The fact that he's going to make his major league debut as a 20-year-old, in the long run, it should mean he's a very, very good player. Guys who make their debut at that age tend to be really, really good. Some of them are difference makers right away, like Juan Soto and Fernando Tatis. And so it's just the likelier outcome is Jackson Holiday's a kind of underwhelming fantasy option from day one. But the upside is significant.
I don't foresee Jackson Holiday being pulled into like the top 50, like we saw Wyatt Langford and Jackson Chourio. Jackson Chourio almost made it in the top 50 in this one. I don't think anyone's going to draft Holiday that high because there are bigger upside questions, particularly at the start of his career. But I would... Is Dansby Swanson still out there? I guess he is.
Yep.
All things being equal, I think I'd rather have Holiday than Swanson, even though you're making that comparison between the two.
And I was making the comp to Swanson when he got called up.
Yeah.
All right.
And I updated the rankings here on Tuesday, and I moved Jackson Holiday up, I think, just inside of the top 150. That might not be aggressive enough for some.
Yeah, I got him right at 150 now.
But I have him still below Dansby Swanson, so I would take Swanson in a vacuum.
15-teamer, I think I'd take Swanson. Like, the deeper the league, the more incentive there is to take Swanson. But anyway, we're missing a lot of picks here, so we should.
I already regret taking Will Smith because when I took him, there were so many second basemen and shortstops left. I'm like, one of those will definitely make it back to me. There's no doubt, and they all went. So Bryson Stott, Ketel Marte. For some reason, Scott took Andres Jimenez, even though I think he has like all the speed in the world already and already had a second baseman. So thanks, Scott.
I want to win steals every week, Frank. That's the thing about a head-to-head categories league compared to a roto league. Like, you can't really overdo it in a category in this format. The more you go over it, the more sure you can be that you'll win that category every single week.
Well, let's catch people up. I think where we left off was like Luis Arraez, Max Muncy went, Scott took Andres Jimenez, Xander Bogaerts, Paul Sewald. I took Seiya Suzuki, who I do like quite a bit, but might just be like a better roto player. Just doesn't really stand out anywhere, I guess. After Suzuki, David Bednar, who is still dealing with a lat, but I think that's a pretty good discount.
He's played catch 2 days in a row this week already. I think that was earlier in the week. So yeah, I think that's fine.
After Bednar, Justin Verlander, and Chris, you got your first starting pitcher, Joe Ryan. Woo!
Looked excellent today, guys.
He did.
I don't know if you saw, but no home runs allowed. 6 strikeouts in 4 innings, 13 whiffs on 62 pitches. He is, I give him this. I know you guys hate Joe Ryan. You are the founders of the He-Man Joe Ryan hating club. He is continuing to tweak. Remember last year he added a sweeper. He added a splitter. This year, his slider velocity and his splitter velocity are both up. I don't necessarily know if that's going to fix the issues that Joe Ryan has, but he is aware of the issues. He hears your concerns, and
he's run out of time.
He is taking steps to address them.
He's kept trying to find that secondary pitch that is really good to go with the fastball, and I think it's the breaking point now. He needs to find it right now.
Maybe he did.
He's just going to fade into obscurity.
4 whiffs on 10 splitters today, 3 whiffs on 9 sweepers.
Maybe
he figured it out.
Maybe he did.
Come on, the price is fine there.
The velocity on the secondary
pitches,
is
fine. Yeah.
The velocity on the secondary pitches has been up. The slider up 2 miles per hour, the splitter up almost 4 miles per hour compared to last year. So, yeah, I mean, there are. It looks like there are some improvements happening, hopefully, with Joe Ryan. I need to make a pick, so I will quickly select one of my faves. Bailey Ober, I think a good kind of balancing act with Dylan Cease as who I took earlier with the higher whip. Bailey Ober, typically a good whip pitcher. The other picks that we missed out on after Chris took Joe Ryan, Carlos Rodon, Vinny P.
Baby.
Vinny Pasquantino to finish out round 10. Then into round 11, Yainer Diaz, Byron Buxton at 122nd overall. Again, you have 2 utility spots in this league, but earlier than we're used to.
Still too early, yeah.
Yeah. Ryan Helsley.
Chris is saying that.
Wow. I mean, yeah, I love Byron Buxton, but I've got him 185th. So, and then that's 15 spots ahead of even his like elevated March ADP. So
Okay. I wondered if J.R. Fenton was trying to get a reaction from you taking Byron Buxton right before your pick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wasn't considering Buxton. I also already have 3 outfielders. So 3 outfielders and 1 utility. So it would be a more difficult fit.
After Buxton, Chris, you took Ryan Helsley, then Tanner Scott, Marcelo Zuna at 125th overall. Seems pretty good in a league with 2 utility spots. I took Bailey Ober, Nick Castellanos, Spencer Torkelson, and Scott. Are you ready to talk about your pick, or are you still deciding?
It was going to be Spencer Torkelson or Nick Castellanos, and they were taken just before me here. So
Ooh.
a little bit of a scramble.
All right, so I will go back to Chris for now. And Chris, Ryan Helsley was your second closer, right? How do you feel about him this year?
Boy, if he just stays healthy, there's no question that Ryan Helsley is an elite reliever. He's got 146 strikeouts over the past 2 seasons in 100.1 innings of work. He's really, really good. It's just a question of, can he stay on the mound? I'm willing to take that flyer in 1, the 120-ish range of the draft, and 2, especially in a daily lineups head-to-head categories league where the overall numbers aren't as valuable as how good he can be when he's available. And, the replacement level is going to be pretty high in this league.
After Spencer Torkelson, Scott was on the clock, tilting live before our eyes. And you went with Chris Bassett, someone that you've warmed up to recently, Scott.
I do find myself drafting him a lot and feeling more comfortable with him. Great whip option, goes deep into games, so tends to get a lot of wins. The strikeout total because of the innings ends up being pretty good. And I hadn't drafted a starting pitcher since I took Yoshinobu Yamamoto and Pablo Lopez back-to-back. So I was feeling like things were getting pretty globby there. I don't know. I probably could have waited till my next pick, but I felt like there were more alternatives that I liked among the hitter and relief pitcher ranks than there were among the starting pitchers.
All right. After you took Chris Bassett, we saw Walker Buehler go to George Kurtz, who is gobbling up the potential injury discounts. Already has Kevin Gausman and Garrett Cole on his team as well.
But you know what? In a head-to-head league versus a roto league, it's a lot easier to get away with that because let's say, okay, Walker Buehler doesn't make his debut until May, and he's got Gausman. Let's say he gets a delayed start. Let's say he starts off 1-3. It's still just about getting to the championship. And if you can get injury discounts who are going to be there starting in May, you can go on a run and still be there in the playoffs and have a really, really good team. So it's an interesting strategy here where you're sort of punting a few weeks at the top.
Chris, I noticed you said if he gets off to an 0-3 start or 1-3, whatever it might be, don't you mean like 15-15 or?
No, absolutely not.
Chris does not like that standing system for those. There are different ways to play head-to-head categories. It could be 1 win. It could be most categories. Different ways to play it. After Walker Buehler, Esteury Ruiz, and Yandy Diaz. That is the end of round 11. Let's sign off hour 1 here on the audio side. And when we return, part 2 here of our live head-to-head categories mock draft. Welcome back into Fantasy Baseball Today, part 2, hour 2 of our 12-team live head-to-head categories mock draft. We are into round 12, where the first 3 picks were Jake Berger, Yu Darvish, and Eloy Jimenez. So perhaps the effect of those 2 utility spots, but we have seen all of Ohtani, maybe not Ozuna. This is probably the right spot for Ozuna, but Ohtani, Buxton, and Eloy going earlier than we normally see.
Yeah, it's an interesting move from George Kurtz, who already had one of his utility spots filled. So now he's got none of the flexibility that comes with that extra utility spot here, because he does have Jose Ramirez at third, drafted Max Muncy for a utility 1, and added Eloy Jimenez. So I think it makes sense to push up those util-only players, but doing so when you don't have that when you're losing the flexibility, it's a little tougher to swallow, I think.
I didn't realize I was on the clock.
Wow, Scott, rookie move. You got to stick with Josh Naylor, man.
No,
Come on.
I am taking Pete Fairbanks.
How dare you? Let's take a look at Scott's team and see what's going on here. But Pete Fairbanks, your second reliever so far. You've got Matt Olson, Matt McClain, all the Matts, Royce Lewis, Ha-Sung Kim, Fernando Tatis, Evan Carter, Andres Jimenez. Lots of speed on that team, it looks like. Your pitchers, Pablo Lopez, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Chris Bassett, Josh Hader, and Pete Fairbanks. So 3 starters, 2 relievers, and a decent amount of offense so far.
Yeah, I could use some more power. Going to have to dedicate my last outfield spot and probably my second utility spot to that, I would say.
Mm-hmm. I am on the clock. The latest pick was Jordan Walker. Just before that was Josh Young.
Great value for Josh Young.
Top of my rankings are all catchers and closers. I already have a catcher, so not going to do that. Yeah, well, I haven't filled shortstop yet. I'll just continue on the theme of building out a roto team in a head-to-head categories lineup. I have like a lot of do a little bit of everything, but not awesome at anything type of players. I don't know. I mean, I guess if you have enough of those guys, it could still work out in a head-to-head categories league. But yeah, I don't have any like extreme power standouts or extreme speed standouts. It's just a lot of solid players so far. After I took Dansby Swanson, Wilson Contreras, and Hunter Green. Poor Chris. Did you?
I was gonna take Hunter Green.
So
You sounded. I couldn't tell from that noise that came out of your mouth, Frank, whether you were sympathizing with Chris or celebrating that you upset him.
I will leave it open-ended. It's
well, it wasn't you.
It's kind of like The Sopranos. Oh,
it wasn't you.
How do you interpret that noise exactly?
Yeah, normally I think in most episodes it's like you did something wrong. Like, oh, what are you doing?
I don't love it.
Uh-oh. Chris, on the clock with 15 seconds. Jose Alvarado is the pick.
See, the perfect response from both of you there would have been, oh, but you missed your opportunity, unfortunately.
Only if we were professional broadcasters or something, that would have been great. After Alvarado, Clay Holmes, and we are up to the last pick of round 12. It was Riley Green. I kind of feel like some of the people picking right after you.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that.
They're looking to torment you, Chris.
A little bit.
They don't like you.
The Buxton pick.
It's fine. The thing is that you have to keep in mind, I never have a plan. So it's not like I was, that's fine. I'm fine. It's fine.
That sounds like a rationalization.
Are there any pitchers left for you to take, Chris?
Healthy pitchers?
Actually, yeah, there are some.
Yeah, there's some.
There's plenty.
Yeah,
there's pitchers.
Good pitchers.
Yeah, that's a different.
They're all gloppy pitchers. I'll tell you that much.
There are lots of interesting injury stash pitchers. I think still available. Well, one of them might have just went. Gavin Williams, who we're waiting to learn more on.
So I kind of got screwed up. I don't know if we talked about this yesterday. My Kodai Senga Gavin Williams combo in the FSGA draft last night, but I was doing a radio hit. That's what happens when you do these expert leagues. They'll call you for the Sirius XM radio show in the middle of the draft, and you're chatting with Steve Phillips and those guys, and then
this guy,
you've got your queue set up, and maybe your queue isn't as well set up as it should have been before you got called up, and you draft Gavin Williams and Kodai Senga in consecutive picks at the turn. And then you realize immediately after you get off the phone, oh no, they're both hurt. And so that wasn't great.
I think it sounds like Gavin Williams is just a day-to-day injury. There are still day-to-day injuries.
Sure.
That is the most common kind of injury.
And it was like my 15th and 16th round picks in a 14-team league. So I'm fine with both of them in theory. I'm probably not fine with both of them, especially in a draft where I kind of waited at starting pitcher, because then I had to really hammer starting pitcher for like 8 picks in a row. I wrote about it on the site. I kind of did a round through round walkthrough on CBSSports.com and in the newsletter. So if you want to check that out, you can get my thoughts there.
All right. Well, should I make the smart pick
No,
or make the sexy pick?
never make the smart pick.
Do I draft with my brain?
Never draft with your brain.
Draft with my heart.
Draft with your nethers.
Don't finish.
Whoa.
Don't finish that sentence.
Whoa.
I'm going to take the sexy pick. So not I needed another position more, but I wound up taking Christian Encarnacion Strand. Josh Naylor was still available. I think I have a good amount of batting average already. I have Freddie Freeman on my team. I have Rafael Devers on my team. I think this team needed a little bit more punch, more power. And Christian Encarnacion Strand at 150, I actually moved him up inside of my top 150. I think closer to 140. And with the news that Noelvi Marte is suspended for the first 80 games of the year, I think that frees things up a little bit more for all of the Reds players. And I think it makes it more likely that Encarnacion Strand is an everyday player and can reach that 30 home run upside we think he has.
I've got him as my 130th player in Roto, so I think that's a good value.
Yeah. So me. After Kodai Senga.
Way to go.
Tommy Edman went 148th overall, who is still dealing with that surgically repaired right wrist. Apparently, it's more inflammation than structural, but sounding likely that he will start the season on the IL.
I added him to Bust 2.0. I'm starting to get worried that it might be a lost season. And I don't know if you guys saw Victor Scott. I think it was today. Yes. Reach base 4 times, bunt hit, 2 RBI or 2 line drives up the middle. Just put him on the roster, man. Like Alec Burleson and Brendan, to get out of here with that.
Alec Burleson's going to have a big year.
Oh, okay. Yeah, just put Victor Scott on the roster.
I was going to say, no Alec Burleson slander around here. Scott loves him some Burleson.
I know.
Burleson also hit a home run, by the way, on Tuesday.
Oh, that doesn't even count. It was spring training. It only counts if it's a player I'm excited about.
Victor Scott, by the way, as you mentioned, 3 for 3 with his 4th steal on Tuesday. He's now batting .370 with a .469 OBP this spring. Doesn't have the most experience in the upper minors so far, but he's 23 years old, and he was out in the Arizona Fall League. So got a little bit extra experience out there. I think if the Cardinals wanted him on the roster, they could certainly make that move, but we will wait to find out if that is the case. After I took Encarnacion Strand, Josh Naylor went 1 pick later. Mitch Keller, Craig Kimbrell to Scott, and Brandon Nimmo. Scott, would you have taken Mitch Keller if he was there?
Yes.
And all right.
Sniped.
First question answered. Third closer in the top 13 rounds.
Yep.
That's interesting.
I think this is the format to do it.
Okay.
You're going to win saves almost every week if you have 3 legit closers. And I get why people don't like Kimbrell. He's had it always feels like he's teetering on the edge of disaster, but like the Orioles signed him with the
very early
explicitly to close. They made it clear he's going to be our fill-in for Felix Bautista. He's our closer. And if you look at the numbers the last 3 years for Kimbrell, one of the last 3 years, it was kind of a down year, but 2 of them were great. And the overall stat line for that 3-year period for Kimbrell, 3.10 ERA, a 109 whip, 12.7 K per 9. I mean, that's an elite closer, right?
It's kind of like Kenley Jansen, where these guys were so good early in their careers. And then we did that thing we always do where as soon as they showed like a slight sign of decline, we were like, let's get the next guy up for saves. We don't care about these guys anymore. But like both Kenley Jansen and Craig Kimbrell are still good pitchers. They're not the best closers in baseball anymore, but they both get the job done.
They're reliable enough to close, and when there aren't obvious threats to the role, like this is the most locked in to the closer role Kimbrell's been in a few years. And you know, he's managed to be a good fantasy asset even when he wasn't the for sure closer. He found his way into that role. So now that he's locked into it, I think he's going to be a great starting option and tends to go later than he should.
All right. Catch people up on some picks. After Brandon Nimmo went 154th, we saw TJ Friedel and Jose Berrios to finish out round 13. Into round 14, Ryan Pepio, Jose Leclerc, Anthony Rizzo. Scott, you are up. Let's pull up your team, see what the needs might be. You don't have a catcher. I assume you're not going to take one of those. A third outfielder, a utility, maybe another starting pitcher. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I need to stop messing around with power. And which one am I going to take? I'm going to take Soler. Jorge Soler.
Yeah, I'm signed with the Giants this offseason. It's just a matter of, well, it's not just a matter of staying healthy. He has had some down seasons in previous years. I think, and maybe I'm just making excuses for Soler because I do like him a lot. A very visually appealing swing. But I think the down years that he's had, it's when he's been trying to play through injury a lot of the time. So Soler was healthy last year. He looked great. He had 30+ home runs. And if he manages to play at least 130 games, I would guess he's going to hit another 30 home runs this season.
It's just a question. It's not just a question. There are a lot of questions with Jorge Soler, right? I did the same thing you did. It's only this thing. No, it's a lot of things with Jorge Soler. But one of the things is, okay, if he's playing 130 games, maybe he gives you 30+ homers. Be the first Giants hitter in a long time to do that, by the way.
I think since Barry Bonds.
I think that's right. Yep.
I don't think that's an exaggeration.
No,
I don't think
I
they've
don't
had
think
a 30
so
homer
either.
hitter since Barry Bonds.
And a lot of it's a personnel reasons, like they haven't really built their team around sluggers.
And
I think Soler absolutely could do it at that park.
Brandon Belt would have done it if he played in any other park in baseball.
But if he plays only 130 games, is he going to give you the RBI production of a 30 homer guy? And I'm not sure about that. Thinking about it more, maybe I should have gone Anthony Santander instead, given the lineup context. But I'm obviously locked into Soler now.
I think the upside is higher for Soler.
Yes.
Santander is the higher floor play. So especially if you play in a deeper league with 5 outfielders, Santander, he's out there, he plays every day. He's going to hit you his 25 to 30 homers. Counting stats should be fine. And he'll give you a 250 batting average.
And part of the reason I was saying I don't feel like I can mess around with power anymore is because all those utility-only guys have already gone. I guess except JD Martinez, who apparently is in contact with the Mets again.
Yep.
Maybe I'll add him to my queue. But Eloy Jimenez isn't there anymore, and Byron Buxton isn't. So less power at this stage of the draft than there would otherwise be.
After Scott took Jorge Soler, back-to-back closers, Kenley Jansen, who's expected to make his spring debut on Friday. And
that one was a steal.
Yep. And then Adbert Alzolay, who we think is the Cubs closer. They did sign Hector Neris this offseason. I took Tyro Estrada, and things are looking up, guys. I was tilting earlier because of the Will Smith pick. He kind of messed up my middle infielders, but I wound up with Estrada as my second baseman and Swanson at shortstop. And it doesn't blow you away, but I think it's fine. After I took
the
Estrada,
guy who picked Kenley Jansen's last name is Heist. By the way, that is why it was a steal.
Good point. Very good point.
Also, I absolutely would have taken Kenley Jansen there if he had gotten back to me, because I wanted to say Scott said he's going to win saves every week with his 3 closers, and I was go, bam, 4 closers. You're not winning at least 2 weeks, but I can't do that now.
You cannot. After I took Estrada, Jordan Montgomery, 164th overall. I lowered him in the rankings as well.
Mm-hmm.
I moved him down to, well, maybe not down enough. I moved him down to 148. I see you have him at 181, Chris. So,
Chris, did you forget you were on the clock?
Yes. Sorry.
Do you need to redo that?
I think if you don't mind.
I think you should redo it. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
All right, so Jordan Montgomery goes at 164, Sonny Gray, and then Ke'Bryan Hayes to Chris. Hayes is another name having a big spring, and last year made some adjustments over the final couple of months where he started lifting the ball more, pulling the ball more. That's all we've ever said about Ke'Bryan Hayes is he's got the talent, he hits the ball hard. If he starts to get it in the air to his pull side, we could finally get that.
Yep.
20+ homers, 15 steals, whatever it might be.
3 homers and 23 plate appearances, 0 strikeouts for Ke'Bryan Hayes so far.
Let's go. Anthony Santander, the next pick. They are listening. They're listening. And we are up to the final pick of round 14. Thanks to everyone for hanging out. We've got over 400 people here watching us live. Like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We do appreciate it. And here we are. We're almost up into round 15, and we are officially there. Brian Wu, the final pick of round 14. And
solid pick.
Let's check back in on Chris's team, see what we've got. I know you waited a while to take your first starting pitcher, and it wound up being Joe Ryan.
Ace.
Maybe. You're hitting. You've got William Contreras, Vladimir Guerrero, Gleyber Torres, Brian Hayes, Francisco Lindor, Jazz Chisholm, Adolis Garcia, Julio Rodriguez, and CJ Abrams. You're pitching. Joe Ryan, Kodai Senga, Ryan Helsley, Yohan Duran, Jose Alvarado.
Yeah.
One healthy starting pitcher.
One healthy starting pitcher. I lied to you earlier, Frank. I'm sorry. I don't like lying, but yes, I am going with not the Marmol strategy. I'm going with a mostly closer focused approach. And then I'm going to, try to get some values at starting pitcher, but offense is really, really, really good. As it should be. I spent a ton of my draft capital on the offense, and I think you can piece a pitching staff together here better than you can in any other format. And J.R. Fenton just took Shota Imanaga, who I was hoping to get back, and I should have just left that pick stand when it got autoed.
I was kind of hoping he would somehow make it back to me.
He definitely wasn't going to make it back to you.
That's right. I think I kind of ignored starting pitching for a while too, because I only have 4 starters. I have Zach Eflin, Bailey Ober, Dylan Cease, Freddie Peralta, which is, I don't know.
Pretty good.
Maybe it could work. I also have Edwin Diaz, so only 1 closer. Yeah, probably ignored pitching for way too long. And Chris, you took Bryce Miller. The next pick was Jeimer Candelario. I believe Bryce Miller racked up a bunch of strikeouts here on Tuesday. What have you seen or read about Bryce Miller this spring? I know he's been working on a lot of things.
Yeah, I don't think we've seen anything in front of the StatCast cameras, unfortunately. So we haven't gotten much data on the new splitter. Anecdotally, visually, it looks pretty good from what I've seen. But yeah, he's got 11 strikeouts in 8 innings. He's got 3 walks in those 8 innings. So the command hasn't been quite as good. Very small sample size, and he's allowed a couple of home runs. I think there's upside with Bryce Miller. I think we're kind of at a point in the draft where my downside concerns don't bother me as much with a guy like Bryce Miller. And the Mariners have, I think, earned the benefit of the doubt with their pitching development, not just for guys coming into the or coming up to the majors, but for the changes that those guys have made once they've gotten to the majors. You look at Gilbert adding a really good splitter at the major league level, George Kirby doing the same thing. So the hope with Bryce Miller, and Scott is having a complete meltdown while I'm talking. The hope with Bryce Miller is, one, that the splitter gives him an extra swing and miss pitch. He doesn't have to be quite so reliant on the fastball. And 2, his release point on his sweeper was really messed up last season. I think he lowered his arm slot like 4 inches when he threw his sweeper, and batters just didn't swing at it. So I'm hoping that he was able to put some work in to fix those things.
After Bryce Miller, Candelario, Starling Marte, I took Nick Pivetta to continue with the theme of just get a lot of strikeouts. I'll probably try and balance him with another whip pitcher later on. That's just somehow been the theme of the pitching staff today. After that, Christopher Morel, Christian Javier, and we get to Scott, who was very disgusted by
just throwing stuff.
At least one of those picks.
Yeah.
It was Nick
a few of those picks. So I realized after taking Jorge Soler that Christopher Morel was still out there, and I just have him too far down my rankings. I need to move him up. And then he goes 2 picks before me to RJ White, no relation. And the 2 picks I actually had queued up, since I had already taken Jorge Soler, were both pitchers, Christian Javier and Nick Pivetta. So the 3 picks before mine were the players I wanted. After, 2 rounds ago, the 2 picks before mine, you guys, Jeremy Heist and RJ White in particular, but you too, Frank.
Yeah. Take that, Scott.
I don't like you very much right now. So I take Rhys Hoskins instead to fill my second utility spot, a little more power to help with what I think is the weakest area in my starting lineup. I haven't paid a lot of attention to batting average, but I don't think I have huge liabilities there. Hoskins is probably the biggest liability there, in fact. So, I feel pretty good about my offense.
I have not drafted Rhys Hoskins yet this season, I think, and I always end up being like 1 round too late to get him, and I want to change that. I want Rhys Hoskins on some teams this season. Remember, 2022, his ADP was 124. 2021, his ADP was 160. Now he goes, 180-ish is pretty early for Rhys Hoskins at this point. So I think you just got 30 home runs and 100 RBI. So that was a great pick.
After Hoskins, Salvador Perez, the aforementioned Victor Scott. I don't know that I've ever seen him drafted in any of our mocks, but here he is, 179th overall. Chas McCormick, and then into round 16, Sean Murphy. And I knew eventually there would be some great catcher values in a one-catcher league, and I think we're starting to see some of it. Sean Murphy in the 16th round. That sounds pretty awesome. So, Doc is back on the clock.
Yeah, and Frank, did you take Victor Scott in TGFBI?
I think I did.
No, that's a 15-team, 29-round draft. So
either my last or second to last pick. Part of the reason why I took him was that draft was a little bit earlier, and my hope was, all right, let's just take some upside shots on the bench. If he doesn't make the roster, I'll just drop him before the first waiver run. So yeah, so I'm rooting for him.
And the thing about that is, we talked about this, I think, in a recent podcast, but NFBC leagues have a rule where you can't pick up a player until they've made their major league debut unless you draft them.
Yes. So now that I have drafted Victor Scott, if he does not make the Cardinals opening day roster,
you can just cut him.
I can drop him. He will be in the player pool forever because he was drafted and then dropped in the NFBC. So that's just a weird kind of quirk rule with that specific format. After Sean Murphy, Alex Lang, Marcus Stroman. Scott, you are back up. And I hope you didn't get sniped again.
I did not.
Okay.
No, the other end of me, the other side of me, George Kurtz, Doc Eisenhower, Sean Millerick, they don't concern me. They're not on my level. Come on.
Taking shots. What? Wow.
They're not taking the players I want anyway. No, I'm going to do something a little out of character too. I'm actually not going to wait until the
big
end.
Dumper.
Yeah, I'm actually not going to wait until the very last round to take my catcher because I am trying to achieve this balance in the categories. And I really don't want to leave myself weak in the power categories. I'm going to use my catcher spot to make sure I meet that too. Obviously there's a chance Mitch Garver, Francisco Alvarez could also meet that need. And maybe I would have had a shot at one of them on the way back. But I think Cal Raleigh most safely meets that need. And so given that there wasn't another obvious choice for me here, as well as I'm doing in saves and don't need any other hitters and no pitcher is jumping out at me at this point, I'm going to go ahead and take Cal Raleigh and meet that categorical need.
Chris, this next pick is for you, bud.
Oh, thank you.
And it is Mason Miller for me because I do not have a second closer yet. But in this and I don't know that Mason Miller will be the A's closer, but I think in head-to-head categories, you can take relievers even if they aren't closers and just plug them in your lineup all the time. And then you can just, pick up strikeouts throughout the week and hopefully help with the ratios. And my gosh, Mason Miller has looked so good this spring. Can he stay healthy? That remains to be seen. But man, he's pumping 100 miles per hour, he's striking everybody out. My guess is if the Oakland A's want to win games, which I don't know if they actually do, Mason Miller will wind up getting some saves for them this year.
Well, you don't have to talk me into it because I was about to pick him.
I'm sorry.
I'm annoyed.
But also, I did dedicate the pick to you, so
I appreciate that.
It was kind of cool.
Maybe for your next gift, you can just give him to me.
Yeah, we can make this is a trading league, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we're not playing it out, so we can do whatever we want.
After Cal Raleigh went, Nathan Eovaldi, Hunter Brown, I took Mason Miller, Kyle Harrison, Francisco Alvarez. I think great value.
Great pick.
Catchers at this point, it's just they're all good values. Chris, you took JD Martinez, and let's talk in hypotheticals. If he does wind up with the New York Mets, how do you think that would go overall for his value?
I think he would have to be a top 150 pick. I think anywhere he signs, I'm not too worried about that just because JD Martinez was so good last season. Now, obviously, there are plenty of concerns about his age. I think he's 37 going into his 37 season. His plate discipline took a big step backwards last year. He had to probably trade some plate discipline for quality of contact. Quality of contact was as good, arguably better than it's been since 2017, at least. 518 expected WOBA on contact. So skill set is still very, very strong for JD Martinez.
All right. After you took JD Martinez, Ryan McMahon and Yuki Matsui to finish out round 16. Let's take a break. When we return into round 17, we go right after this.
Who's in? Who's out? Let the madness begin. The NCAA Men's Basketball Championship Selection Show on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
Into round 17 we go, and Brian Abreu, Trevor Story, and Chris, you got me back because I was going to take Robert Suarez. So
I had queued up Suarez too. I was going to get that fourth closer.
Frank, I will trade you Robert Suarez for Mason Miller right now.
No deal.
I think Scott, can you just process that one? We don't need to accept it or anything.
For our mock draft, yeah, sure. No, so the fact Yuki Matsui went ahead of Robert Suarez, I don't feel like that needs to be happening anymore. I understand it's a head-to-head categories league, and there's more incentive to take setup men in that format. And the same guy who took Yuki Matsui also took Brian Abreu. So he may just be doing it for ratio help. And look, there's still a chance Matsui ends up in the closer role eventually for the Padres, but it does seem all but official that Robert Suarez is the closer for the Padres. AJ Casavel, the great beat writer for the Padres, MLB.com. He's the beat writer I talk about most. He's very, very good at his job. But he's made it pretty clear that Robert Suarez is the direction the Padres are planning to go for ninth inning duties. And I feel like it's kind of flown under the radar because I haven't seen his ADP move up as much as a result.
After Suarez, Steven Kwan, Eduardo Rodriguez, I took Lane Thomas. This is a player I have not drafted at all this offseason. 198th overall. His ADP is usually around 130, 140, and
he went lower than I have him ranked, and I have him like 60 spots below ADP.
Yeah, I never take him, but he could still be a 2020 guy, and he's running a lot this spring. He already has 5 steals. So,
I mean, even in the second half when he kind of collapsed back down to like a 720 OPS, which is what he had been before last season, he still had 14 home runs and 12 steals. So I do think the home runs and steals are going to be pretty good. It's just not a 10th round pick quality for me. But at this level, yeah, I think that's a great pick.
After Lane Thomas, Kyle Bradish at 199th, then Christopher Sanchez, and Scotty is jumping on the hype train. AJ Puck.
Well, I got sniped again by Jeremy Heist with Christopher Sanchez there. So Nolan Gorman goes right after me. That was the other guy I was considering. It would have been up for my bench, which is why I didn't do it.
I was thinking about Gorman too.
Yeah.
I'm always thinking about Gorman.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think AJ Puck's going to be really good. I don't know how long he'll last in the role for the Marlins, given all his years in relief and the fact he originally moved to the bullpen. Even though he was a top starting pitcher prospect, he moved to the bullpen because of health concerns. So he may not last long, but I think he'll be really good for the time he lasts, like over 10K per 9 good, particularly with some of the pitches he's added to his arsenal. I know the splitter's drawn rave reviews. Another left-hander who may be throwing a splitter here. Now Chris loves those. Yeah, Puck, I'm a believer.
Yeah, I like it as well. And I moved him up a lot in the rankings. I might need to move him up even more if I want to actually get a shot at drafting him. After AJ Puck, Nolan Gorman, Nestor Cortez, Carlos Estevez, and Eric Fetty. So, Scott, hope you weren't planning to double down on pitcher because you might have been planning on Eric Fetty.
I was.
You know.
Uh-oh. Don't tell me you're backing off.
Scott hates Eric Fetty. I've always said it.
I don't know. He's made only 2 spring starts. I don't know. Did he go today? I don't
think so.
He's made only 2 spring starts. Not a lot happening in the strikeout department in either of those starts. And I don't want to put a ton on that. But, the enthusiasm is based on so little to begin with, right? That I kind of want to see something really good from him this spring before I elevate him too far. I'm not saying I wouldn't have taken him in this draft. If another round or two had gone by, I absolutely would have. But I don't know. I'm hedging a little bit with that one, I must say.
Okay. After Eric Fetty, DL Hall, Jonathan India, I think DL Hall, not to the same extent as AJ Puck, but is someone who is gaining some steam and hopefully will be in the Brewers rotation. Scott, you went ahead and took Nick Lodolo, who made his first start of the spring just the other day, and he threw 2 shutout innings. And I believe I read he hit like 96 or 97 on the gun, the fastball. So
I think Nick Lodolo is really good. You know, I last week I came out with my my survey I do on social media every year, just kind of talking about asking people their favorite breakout player and different superlatives basically for the upcoming season. And I was looking back at last year's results, and Nick Lodolo was the breakout pitcher pick everybody was most confident in. Leading number of responses at this time last year. And so now that he's gotten the all clear with the leg, I mean, the little we saw of him last year, he was striking out everybody. I know the overall results weren't that good, but I still think there's a ton of upside there for Lodolo. And I'm probably more enthusiastic about drafting him than Eric Fetty.
So I did something wrong when I took Edwin Diaz that I would like to caution everybody else from doing in their head-to-head categories or roto leagues, even for that matter. Taking an elite closer and then ignoring the position for way too long because
there are no closers left, Frank.
There's nothing left. Yeah. I took Will Smith partially because I now have both Will Smiths, and that's pretty cool.
Technically a closer. Yeah. Well, think of all the Will Smith inspired team names. Oh, wait.
But I also do think that he will be the Royals closer to start the season. How long will that last? That I'm not so sure about. I got Mason Miller, so I technically have Diaz, Miller, Will Smith combined. Maybe it's 2 closers. I don't know exactly with Smith and Miller. Miller, you'll still get a lot of strikeouts. I think the ratios will be good. Smith could be the complete opposite. It could be bad ratios, but he'll get some saves. But yeah, I ignored that for way too long, and I would caution everyone else to not do that when taking an elite closer. After I took Will Smith, Brendan Donovan, Justin Turner, and Chris, you selected Reed Detmers, who I traded you in the Scott White Dynasty League. How about that?
Yeah, don't tell Scott when we made that trade.
I would never.
We made it only when it was legal. And didn't have any discussions about it prior to that. If we're going to do the Nick Lodolo was everyone's favorite breakout last season thing, well, Reed Detmers was actually everyone's favorite breakout pitcher. He was just going so early that I don't think people were saying that about him the way they were Lodolo. I have a lot of concerns about Reed Detmers that I didn't have at this time last season. He didn't take the step forward that we hoped for, but it was a weird season because he was actually much better against right-handed batters than he was against left-handers. I want to pull the numbers up because they are stark and worth headlining. Reed Detmers had a 694 OPS allowed against right-handed batters, which is actually very, very good for a left-handed pitcher. He had an 882 OPS allowed to left-handed batters. Reed Detmers is a left-handed pitcher who throws 96, 97 miles an hour. Lefties aren't supposed to hit you like that. And so, I don't know. I'm hoping there was some stuff with like his slider not working as well as he hoped it would. That, you know, he's hoping some offseason work could fix. I'm hoping that there's still some certainly sleeper appeal for Reed Detmers, but potentially even, you know, the ability to live up to the expectations we had for him last year, I think is still there.
After you took Reed Detmers, Willie Adames, Colt Keith, and now we're into round 19, Masataka Yoshida. For anyone watching, you saw me react to Aaron Savali being drafted at 218. He was my next pick. Probably could have taken him last round and got Will Smith this round. I don't think anyone else was going to take Will Smith, but whatever. Chris, you took Luis Severino, who has looked pretty good so far this spring. Apparently the Mets have they're saying they figured out what the tip pitching issue was last year. So
they're saying it was an easy fix.
That's what I'm hoping, because the velocity was still mostly where it was supposed to be last season. The movement profiles didn't look that different. The stuff still looked pretty good. And so it was one of those situations where it was weird how horrible he was. But remember 2022, even though he, you know, obviously has had a ton of trouble staying healthy over the past couple of seasons, 2022, He pitched 102 innings with a 3.18 ERA and a 1.0 WHIP with well more than the strikeout per inning. So I still think Luis Severino has plenty of upside here.
After Severino, Yusei Kikuchi, Ezekiel Tovar, and I took Anthony Volpe, who I wrote up in Bust 1.0. It's very similar to Lane Thomas. I mean, he's a bust when his ADP is 130, 140. At 222, I don't think he's a bust. I mean, if it doesn't work out, you could just drop Anthony Volpe. He still did go 2020 last year, and the talk this spring has been that he has leveled out his swing. He's hoping to hit more line drives. For what it's, I know he's hit for a good batting average so far this spring, but that's exactly what I called for when talking about him as a bust. He had a huge uppercut in his swing last year. Anthony Volpe did.
And we talked about that when he was coming up. He had that really low batting average in 2022. And I think a lot of people wrote it off as, well, it was just bad BABIP luck. But no, he was hitting too many fly balls and too many infield fly balls as a result. And so I have questions about whether he's going to be able to hit for power with this swing because the quality of contact is pretty mediocre, but maybe it just helps him handle breaking balls a little better because he was really bad against them last year.
Yeah, and I think the hope would be less home runs, but getting on base more, which could allow him to steal more bases. So maybe a similar skill set to, a Tyro Estrada, who I got 70 picks earlier, right?
Or an Andres Jimenez,
Yeah, like 15 homers, 25 steals with a 250 batting average.
But
that would still be a really valuable player for fantasy.
Volpe is in my Bust 2.0 coming out tomorrow in the newsletter. And the comp I drew was to Trevor Story and what he's done since getting to the Red Sox. And we all agree Trevor Story's been an absolute disaster since getting to the Red Sox. He has a better batting average, more runs and more RBI in 22 fewer games with basically the same number of home runs and steals. And in most drafts, Trevor Story goes 80 to 100 picks later. In this draft, I think Story went like 10 picks earlier. So I like Volpe there.
All right. After I took Volpe, Kenta Maeda, who made a start on Tuesday, and he looked pretty good.
Yes.
4 shutout innings with 7 strikeouts, 13 swinging strikes on 65 pitches for Kenta Maeda in that start. After that, Alec Boehm, Charlie Morton to Scott, and Tristan McKenzie to George Kurtz. Scott, talk to me about Charlie Morton because I feel like I haven't seen you draft him at all yet this offseason.
You have not, even though he's a strikeout guy, a strikeout specialist. And that's kind of how that's been the focus when building my pitching stats. I've talked about that a lot, but he just feels like such a liability for whip with his control issues that I haven't been that motivated to take him. But to me, he was the last pitcher who I feel like is must draft in this format. I'm not saying no other starting pitchers will be taken, but I could live without any of the others being taken. And I need somebody, presuming Nick Lodolo begins the year on the IL, as he is behind in his buildup. I need somebody to slot in my lineup. And yeah, Charlie Morton, I think the negative impact of the whip will be less is less of a concern when you're going week to week with it, as opposed to it's going to linger with you all season because you started him for that one terrible start in a roto league, So I can tolerate him a little more here, and he'll probably give me a lot of strikeouts and wins on those occasions I do start him.
Frank, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
How are we feeling about our early catchers? You and I both took catchers in the 7th round?
That sounds right.
Well, you took him later, Chris. I think Adley went. Oh no, I'm sorry. Was it 9? Was it William Contreras in round 9 when you got?
Yeah, it was William Contreras and Will Smith both in round 9.
9, yeah, so even later than you were saying.
Yeah, and great. I still love the value.
Yeah,
but when I look at my rankings, my top players are Mitch Garver, a third baseman, Logan Ahapi, Gabriel Moreno, Keibert Ruiz, Jonah Heim, 2 outfielders, Bo Naylor. How do you feel about your early round catcher? I'm still happy with it.
I was looking to see who the next starting pitcher taken was because I could use more pitching right now.
Yeah.
And it was actually Verlander and then Joe Ryan. So I don't even really, that was back in round 9 when we took the catchers.
Yeah, that's my number 1.
So I would have,
starter, okay.
I could use another pitcher right now. And I wish I took one earlier, but I didn't love the pitchers in that range. So I think I'm still okay with it. I think I'm still all right with it. Getting Will Smith in around pick 100 when I did. Let's catch people up. The latest after McKenzie, James Outman, Ian Happ at 228. Phenomenal pick. Ryan Weathers also on the rise. Looks like he will be in the Marlins rotation because Edward Cabrera has a shoulder impingement and Max Meyer was sent back to AAA. So, and Ryan Weathers has looked great this spring. He hit 99 miles per hour a few times. The fastball has been up. Did have some prospect pedigree. So we'll see if it works out for Ryan Weathers. Kobe Mayo, another prospect with the Orioles who has massive power. But where will he play? See, something similar for lots of Orioles prospects. Matt Chapman and Scott, you're back up.
I think I got to take Cedric Mullins. I'm not counting on him as being a part of my lineup, but those weeks when I look at the matchups and say I could use more steals here, it's just, I put Mullins in my bust 2.0 because I think the Orioles may begin to phase him out, but they may not. And a potential 15 homer, 30 steal outfield at this stage of the draft, round 20, pick 232. Again, this is what now the third or fourth bust pick of mine that I've taken, but the values on all of them, I feel like, have justified it.
And I feel like that happens a lot in the mock drafts that we do, which makes sense, right? If we're doing them with other people who listen to the podcast, if these are players that we're constantly talking down about, all right, everyone's down on these players, but there comes a time where they do become a value. And so you did that with Mullins. I did it with Volpe. I took Lane Thomas around pick 200, someone I'd never take, but just seems like a pretty good value at that point. After Mullins, Andrew Abbott and Jared Kelnick, I need some more pitchers for the bench. And I wrote up Brian Bayo in Breakouts 2.0. He's got an awesome changeup. He throws pretty hard, 96 miles per hour with his sinker. The sinker changeup combo is good. He needs a breaking pitch and apparently has worked with Pedro Martinez this offseason to refine his slider. So if we can get anything from that slider from Brian Bayo, then I do think he could take that next step here with the Red Sox in 2024. After Bayo, Paul Skeens, who is arguably the top pitching prospect in all of baseball, will start the year in the minors, but should likely see him at some point this year. And then Jackson Merrill, who was named to the Padres opening day roster.
Good pick.
We are going to hear more about the Dodgers and Padres rosters sooner than other teams because they are playing in that first series in Korea next week. And so manager Mike Schilt said Jackson Merrill has earned the opportunity to get on the plane. So he will be in Korea and presumably in the opening day lineup for the Padres. That's awesome.
I'm wondering, based on Chris's reaction here, good pick. I got to move him up. So I was going on the word of that great beat writer for the Padres, AJ Cassavell. He said early this spring, as long as Jackson Merrill proves he's up to it as a hitter, he's going to be on the opening day roster. So I said, okay, I'm going to rank him as if he'll be on the opening day roster. And I kept drafting him as a result, sometimes at what seemed like crazy discounts to me. So I wonder if it's going to be one of those situations now where I was out ahead of everybody and now everybody's going to surpass me and I'll just never have a chance at Jackson Merrill again.
Like I drafted him in TGFBI because he went close to 300, I think.
Oh, I've been getting him.
And so I drafted him
top 400.
Yeah. But
I have him way higher than that, but
I'm going to move up to around 200 is what I'm going to do.
Okay. Let me see where I actually have him. I've never had to draft him where I actually rank him.
So you have
now I'll probably have to.
You have him 258, Scott. I'm looking at it right now, and I have I updated the rankings. I moved Merrill up to 287. That was actually before the news came out, so I probably got to move him up again here if I do want to keep drafting Jackson Merrill. After he went, Chris, you took Gavin Stone, someone we've talked about lately as a deep sleeper. Then
seems like he's in the rotation. Last I saw, he's traveling to Korea with the team.
Yeah, I think he will be because Emmett Sheehan likely to start on the IL. Same thing with Walker Buehler.
And to be clear, Gavin Stone is not going to pitch likely in the first 2 games of the season, but they do have 2 exhibition games in Korea against the Padres as well. The Dodgers do. And so I think that's to keep him on schedule with the team out there.
After you took Gavin Stone, Brandon Lau, Michael Bush, and then we're into round 21, Ryan Presley, Ty France, Brandon Fott. I think an interesting pick, Chris, and I probably would have taken him if you didn't. So I know he hasn't looked good in spring. He made some adjustments in the second half last year, pitched really well in the postseason. He has an awesome sweeper. Does he have anything else? That's the question with Brandon Fott, because his balls get hit so hard.
He was I talked about Reed Detmers and how bad he was against lefties and how weird that was because he's a lefty. Brandon Fott was like just as bad against lefties. Now he's a righty, so it makes sense. But yeah, he had an 867 OPS allowed to left-handed batters. He wasn't much better against righties, to be fair.
Yeah, big home run issues for Brandon Fott. But again, he made that adjustment last year, changed which part of the mound he was throwing from, and he did have some success. So I still have some hope for him. He was a pretty big name pitching prospect as well. After Brandon Fott, Matt Brash, Jorge Polanco, I took Cutter Crawford, and then the next pick was Shane Baz, who my guess is we'll see at some point in May later on in the season, but I think we'll hopefully start on the IL. If they just option him, then you can't stash him on an IL spot, and that would suck for Shane Baz. So I hope they do put him on the IL. Cutter Crawford, I took him. He's always had really good swinging strike rates. Velocity is up a little bit this spring. People who are way smarter when talking and evaluating pitching seem to be all in on Cutter Crawford. So I'm just kind of jumping on the bandwagon here.
Yeah, I was thinking after I said what I said about Charlie Morton, he's the last starting pitcher who I think has to be drafted in this format.
Yes.
Cutter Crawford might. I don't have him ranked that way. I made a note here to probably move him up. But he's probably in that boat too, especially now that Lucas Giolito is out, and that makes Cutter Crawford's role more secure. Guess what? I'm about to take another bus pick of mine. Isaac Paredes.
I mean, he was
pick 249.
Yeah, he'd been my top player or my second top player for like 80 picks. So that makes sense.
And with his first base, third base eligibility, I have a backup at all my infield spots now.
There you go.
So that's good.
Let's take our final break. When we return, we'll catch you up on the latest picks right after this.
CBS celebrates Women's History Month.
After Shane Baz, we saw JP Crawford. Scott took Isaac Paredes, Chris Bryant, Jared Jones, pitching prospect with the Pirates, who we talked about earlier in the week, is competing for a spot in their rotation. He throws incredibly hard, 99 miles per hour with the fastball, has this really good, it's like a slider cutter. It's like a harder slider. So I think there's going to be lots of whiffs, but potentially some issues with control. But there is some upside and excitement around Jared Jones right now. At the turn, Kerry Carpenter, good pick, like that one. Aroldis Chapman. Let's see, did Sean wind up with David Bednar? Because I'm wondering if he kind of handcuffed the Pirates closer situation here.
He did not. No.
Did not. All right, so just took Chapman, and if Bednar is not ready to go for opening day, then Chapman likely would be picking up the saves. Mitch Garver is the next pick, and then Emmett Sheehan, who still does have lots of upside, but likely to start on the IL. And Scott, you are back up, your second to last pick.
Probably a pitcher. It was going to be Kerry Carpenter if he hadn't gone. But he has gone. So it's not going to be him. It's going to be a pitcher, I think, especially given the daily lineup context here. And I'd want to have options to move in and out of the lineup based on that. I'm going to go with James Paxton. Of course, the big knock on him is he might only give you 12, 15 starts, but they should be good, especially with the Dodgers offense backing him. And so I think as a bench option in a head-to-head league, that's probably where he's best suited.
And I have James Paxton on my NL Labor team, so go Paxton, man. Stay healthy for as long as you possibly could. That would be awesome. After Paxton, Chris Paddock. One more pick, and then I am up. We are in round 22. Thanks, everyone, for hanging out, being here, watching us live. Still over 400 people going strong. We appreciate you. Like this video. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. Jung Hoo Lee at pick 258. could turn out to be a
Good pick.
fantastic pick.
I
And
assumed he was already gone.
I will go ahead and take one of my sleepers. I wanted a little bit more pop on the bench, and I got Tyler O'Neill.
Good pick.
Let's go. Hector Neris, who could potentially steal some saves away for the Cubs. Chris, you are on deck. What are we thinking? Second to last pick.
We got a couple of wise guys. We got one wise guy who hasn't taken a catcher yet, and I have a feeling I know what this person is trying to do, and I'm not going to let him.
Ah, I like it.
We'll see. We'll see if this is what they actually wanted to do. Maybe they'll pop in the chat and say so. But we got one guy who hasn't taken a catcher yet. I'm going to aim for some upside, assuming, I'm going to do the Henry Davis thing. Who,
I moved him up big time in the rankings today too.
I really like him as a sleeper at the catcher position. He is someone who I moved up to 206 in my last update of the rankings overall, which I think would make him around like 16 at catcher, if I'm remembering correctly. 17. So I'm cool with him. You know, we've talked a lot about how there are like the 17 catchers you feel comfortable with as a starter, Scott.
Yep.
I don't know if you include Henry Davis in there. He's not a catcher eligible player right now.
Right. You can't draft him to fill your catcher spot. And
But
I don't like the idea of taking an extra catcher.
Yeah. No, I get that.
Yeah.
But like, I'd rather have
I'm about taking
I'd rather
Henry.
have him than Luis Camposano, personally.
Yeah. Yeah. By the time he has catcher eligibility, he would be not the last of those 18 players. Sure.
Yeah, I think if he already had catcher, I would rank him ahead of Campusano as well. So I'm with you on that one, Chris. After Henry Davis, should mention Taj Bradley also went. There was some news here on Taj Bradley. On Tuesday, he was scratched with pec tightness and sent for an MRI, but manager Kevin Cash said he's optimistic the injury was caught before it became anything serious. So we'll see what happens with Taj Bradley next. But let me quickly pull up their roster resource page. If Taj is not ready to go for opening day, who else will be in this Rays rotation? Because Shane Baz won't be ready. We know that.
No, they've got like Zach Littell as their number 3, right?
Something like that.
Ryan Pepio. Yeah, I don't know what it's going to look like if they have to dip into the minor leagues.
There's someone named Jacob Lopez in AAA. I don't know. I don't know what would happen there. Probably would just get like an opener and a long relief.
Hedge has been pitching in spring, but I don't know if that's an actual thing. Yeah, he's got 2 appearances, 2 innings, so they're not stretching him out yet. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe Mason Montgomery.
Maybe. We'll see. After you took Henry Davis, Mackenzie Gore, Junior Caminero, who was sent down to, I believe it was AAA earlier in the week. So he will not be on the Rays opening day roster. My guess is he'll be up soon. I think somewhere around early May. After Caminero, we're into the final round. John means business. Griffin Canning. Chris selected Carlos Correa. Clayton Kershaw. I believe there are some IL spots on this league, so you can stash Kershaw.
We are going deeper into the starting pitcher pool, though, than you normally see in a categories league. I think it's with the idea that, their daily lineup changes. We got to maximize our starting pitcher options. And that's reasonable enough. But if it's not a daily league for you, you're probably not going to go this deep into the starting pitchers.
I have an idea of a pitcher I would like to take, and hopefully he does not get selected, because I would like to talk about him. I feel like he's a player we haven't talked enough about, and we were pretty excited about him towards the end of last season, Scott.
Just say the name. Stop playing.
I know who you're talking about.
Nope. Can't trust anybody, Chris. Especially not Phil.
I just moved him into my own queue, so I guess I can feel confident I'm not going to get him.
And his
then you can talk about him. Okay, Reese Olson.
No, it's Reese Olson, who had a swinging strike rate of at least 13.9% or higher on 3 different pitches last year. I think some of the hesitation, Scott, this draft season has been we don't know if he was going to be in the rotation for sure, but
yeah,
I think he will be, and he looked really, really good down the stretch last year.
One of Matt Manning, Reese Olson, and Casey Mize is going to have to be left out of the Tigers starting 5, barring an injury, of course. Life may find a way. And, I mean, obviously Matt Manning and Casey Mize, the Tigers have a lot invested in them. I have the most confidence of those 3 in Olsen myself, but it's not for sure he's going to be one of the 5.
By the way, while we're on the topic, did you guys see Jackson Jobe today?
I think I saw some clips, but it was only 1 inning, but he looked awesome. Right?
Legitimate, oh my goodness gracious stuff from Jackson Jobe. He averaged 100 miles per hour with his fastball, hit 102.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, thank you, Susan. 5 whiffs on 13 pitches. That's I mean, his velocity, it was only 1 inning in spring, but his velocity was up significantly because he was like sitting 96, 97 last year, from what I understand.
I wonder if he knew he was only going to throw 1 inning.
Yeah, sure.
Like let it fly. But yeah,
everything looked very, very good for him.
Scott said something there while he was analyzing Reese Olson. Life finds a way. People have taken this Jurassic Park thing way too far. I mean, let's talk about this. I'm getting tweets every day. Like, I'm losing my credibility as a fantasy analyst.
You know what you should do?
Are.
Lean into it. Lean into it. Don't watch Jurassic Park.
I'm never gonna watch it.
Just watch Jurassic Park 6.
All right, let's do this right now. How many Rocky movies have you seen, Frank?
I have seen all of the original Rocky movies.
Oh, you have? Okay.
You haven't seen Creed?
Okay.
I haven't seen Creed.
Have you seen Alien or Aliens?
No.
Have you seen any Terminator movie?
No.
Have you seen any Star Wars movie?
Yeah, I've seen each of the. I saw the 3 they made back in the day. I guess the first 3, even though it's like 4, 5, and 6 actually. And then I saw episodes 1, 2, and 3. I saw the 7th movie, and then nothing after that.
Have you seen Back to the Future?
I have seen all the Back to the Future movies.
Oh my goodness, you're doing better than I thought. Have you seen Ghostbusters?
Yes.
Honestly, you don't need to. Those ones are overrated. Indiana Jones?
Oh, the first Ghostbuster. Come on.
It's fine.
The first Ghostbusters is
It's fine.
I should
maybe
not
on the Mount Rushmore of comedy.
I should not answer these questions truthfully anymore because
Have you watched Indiana Jones?
the backlash that I'm going to get.
He has not watched Indiana
Go watch Indiana Jones
and
and the Raiders of the Lost Ark right now.
I will not answer any more questions.
He's got to watch. Maybe it's just a Spielberg thing. He just doesn't want to watch Spielberg movies.
No, there's a lot here. I've gone into this with him before. There's a lot. I'm making bad choices here, but there's a lot of.
Agreed with the commenter. Jaws is a top 5 movie of all.
I've seen Jaws.
Incredible movie.
Well, have you guys seen every episode of Pokemon? Well, let me ask you that. No, that's basically what I was watching when I was a kid.
And Adam Sandler movies and Adam Sandler adjacent movies.
The problem is, instead of watching other movies, I've just watched all of the stupid Adam Sandler.
He's just been rewatching Bedtime Stories for the last 15 years.
No. Grandma's Boy, Chris. Grandma's Boy.
Grandma's Boy is the one he always talks about.
Is actually very good.
I can recite like every word in that movie.
I kind of liked Bedtime Stories.
Anyway, let's wrap up the last round here and recap our teams. All right, what happened? After Reese Olson, Braxton Garrett, Logan O'Hoppe, Scott Frelick, who could bounce around for the Brewers this year, some second, some third base. Edward Cabrera to George Kurtz, who, I don't know, maybe if you add up all the arms together on his pitching staff, he has like 5. After that, Justin Lawrence and Robert Stevenson. So
Robert Stevenson, I should have been on top of that.
Did Estevez get picked?
Yeah, he did.
But let's recap our teams.
Stevenson, even if he doesn't become the closer, is probably still going to have a lot of value in a daily head-to-head categories league like this.
Let's start with Scott's team. We'll work our way backwards this time. And your catcher, Cal Raleigh. The infield, Matt Olson, Matt McClain, Royce Lewis, Ha-Sung Kim. In the outfield, Fernando Tatis, Evan Carter, Jorge Soler. At the 2 utility spots, you got Rhys Hoskins and Andres Jimenez. Before we get to the pitching, Scott, not a team of offense you usually put together, but how do you feel about the balance of this offense?
I feel like it's well balanced. I think my weakest offensive category might be batting average.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, but
because
in this format,
other than Tatis, I don't really have a standout. I don't think I have like major liabilities there.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, given the format, given that it's weekly chunks that are scored at a time, ratio stats like batting average, very unpredictable from week to week. So I'm not sure it's the category you want to build around anyway. I will win batting average sometimes. I will lose batting average sometimes. But I think I'm going to win the other offensive categories a lot of times. I would have rather had Christopher Morel as my fourth outfielder than Jorge Soler. I need to move him up in my rankings. Clearly, I don't really like Jorge Soler that much, but he fit the needs of the team at the time.
On your pitching staff, you've got Pablo Lopez and Yamamoto, who you took in the third and fourth round. You've got two, I think more than two. You've got multiple closers: Josh Hader, Pete Fairbanks, Craig Kimbrell. Your other starting pitchers, you got Chris Bassett, AJ Puck, Nick Lodolo, Charlie Morton, James Paxton. On the bench, you've also got Cedric Mullins, Isaac Paredes, Sal Frelick. But Scott, how do you feel about how the pitching staff came together? Because you've got the closers down for certain. You got the two aces. You got Chris Bassett. Do you wish you maybe kind of jumped in a little bit earlier for your SP like 4 or 5?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly. I'd have to go back and look through the draft to see what that would have cost me on the other end. But it did kind of catch me by surprise how deep we went into the starting pitcher pool, and AJ Puck and Nick Lodolo. They're two pitchers I'd like. I'd rather them be the number 1 and 2 pitchers on my bench rather than in my lineup here. I'm hoping that I'm high end enough at pitcher that it'll be fine. I mean, I don't usually get two pitchers as high end as Pablo Lopez and Yoshinobu Yamamoto. And who's my number 3? Chris Bassett?
Yeah.
Or is there another one?
It's Bassett.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess I probably wish ideally I'd have another pitcher in between those. I'd have a number 3 and a different number 3, and Bassett would be my number 4. I think it'll be fine as long as as long as the top guys stay healthy, which is of course not a given since they're pitchers. And, if any of Puck, Lodolo, if Charlie Morton has one of his better seasons, if any of those come through, it'll be fine. I feel pretty good about this team.
And again, Scott was drafting 9th in this draft today, and I was drafting 6th. So we'll take a look here at catcher. I took Will Smith. In the infield, Freddie Freeman, Tyro Estrada, Rafael Devers, Dansby Swanson. In the outfield, I've got Michael Harris, Randy Arozarena, Seiya Suzuki. And my 2 utility bats, I've got Christian Encarnacion Tran and Lane Thomas. On the bench, I grabbed Anthony Volpe and Tyler O'Neill. Just kind of filling out more of the theme. Chris, we talked about it throughout the draft. I don't really have standout power hitters or standout stolen base guys, but I feel like I have a lot of everything, which probably plays better in a roto format than head-to-head categories.
Yeah, I think like if this were a true roto format, I think I'd be a little worried about how much speed you have. I'm not sure you'd have enough to really compete at the high end and that, but it's okay to be weak in one category here. And I think that's probably what happened is you've got like a decent number of 20 steal guys, but no real standouts, like you said. In this format, I think it's fine because the rest of the hitting should be good enough. Getting that edge at Will Smith in the 9th round is going to be really nice for you. So I think it works.
I don't know that I have enough power either, to be honest. I mean, Freeman will give 25.
Yeah, I guess that's the thing is like you look at Freeman, you just kind of assume, okay, he's a great hitter. But yeah, the home runs are for where he gets taken a little lower. Yeah.
It's kind of feels like a B- offense all around, I guess. The pitching staff, I've got my first 2 pitchers were Freddie Peralta and Zach Eflin. I also got Dylan Cease and Bailey Ober. Back to that kind of balancing act. I kept taking strikeout guys and then some like ratio whip help as well. I also did select Nick Pivetta, who I wanted to get more strikeouts on this team. On the bench, I have some upside pitchers in Brian Bayo, Cutter Crawford, and Reese Olson. Just realizing I have like all the Red Sox pitchers and didn't plan on that. My closers, I've got Edwin Diaz and maybe not another closer. I have Mason Miller and Will Smith on this team. I did want to grab another kind of spec reliever for the bench. Probably should have taken Stevenson with that last pick.
Yeah, that was a good pick.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not going to make excuses podcasting while drafting, but this doesn't feel like my best work.
You can't give your draft sheet your undivided attention, and so certain names are going to slip by you, like happened with Christopher Morel with me. Let's see. I was wondering if Aroldis Chapman got drafted, and he got drafted in round 22, so near the end as well. But
I think it's okay. Like I have enough strikeout standouts where, you know, those guys can carry me certain weeks.
strikeouts are going to do great.
Yeah.
As long as Pavetta, you know, doesn't wind up back in the bullpen, as long as Freddie Peralta stays healthy with Dylan Cease there. I mean, you're going to have a ton of strikeouts. Whip, I think, will be a problem.
Yeah.
That is a concern. Let's take a look at Chris's team, who is drafting 3rd overall here and kind of lean into that heavy relief pitcher strategy. How about the offense? William Contreras at catcher. In the infield, Vlad Jr., Gleyber Torres, Ke'Bryan Hayes, Francisco Lindor. In the outfield, Jazz Chisholm, Adolis Garcia, Julio Rodriguez, and your 2 utility bats, JD Martinez and CJ Abrams. Obviously, Chris, you invested a lot in your offense.
It's really good.
It looks pretty awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what happens when, you know, with 12 of your first 15 picks or whatever are hitters.
It better look good.
And it does. Like it should be good everywhere. So
I mean, Ke'Bryan Hayes is your 3rd baseman. I think he could have a great year, but it's like, how did you only end up with Ke'Bryan Hayes?
All right. Well, that was the one spot I waited on, but fine. I'm so sorry. Jeez.
It does not meet Scott's standards of offense. Let's take a look at the pitching staff, and you leaned.
Wait.
All right.
How competitive are you going to be in stolen bases?
I think I'm going to be pretty competitive.
Lindor will give you 25, Jazz 25,
Julio 35.
Yeah,
35.
Lindor 30. I think.
I mean, if Jazz plays half a season,
CJ Abrams though.
Abrams 40. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, did I miss Abrams?
Yeah, he's at the utility spot.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're gonna. I'm speed. Sorry, I missed that one.
No, this is I haven't looked at the numbers. I would assume it's the best offense in the league, and it kind of has to be.
Yeah.
For this strategy to work, I assume it is.
Let's take a look at the pitching staff. You lean into that heavy relief pitcher build, and the starting pitchers you wait.
The pitching's not great.
Yeah, you got Joe Ryan, Luis Severino. Let's just see the other starters first. Reed Detmers, Bryce Miller, Brandon Pfaadt, Gavin Stone, Kodai Senga. So
yeah,
Senga, you've got an injury stash. Joe Ryan, you know, there still is upside as much as we talk about the downside. But yeah, it's mostly upside. But the closers, Yoan Duran, Ryan Helsley, Jose Alvarado, Robert Suarez. So kind of like a pseudo Marmol strategy here, Chris.
Yeah, it's more saves focused than a typical Marmol strategy. I think it would be a little better if I'd sacrificed a little offense to get one more high-end pitcher. I was hoping to take Zach Eflin when you took him with my next pick. I don't know who I took instead, but I feel like I would probably feel better about that if I had that opportunity. You took Zach Eflin when I took Jazz. So if I swapped out Jazz for a decent outfielder and had Eflin instead of, you know, whoever as my number 2 starting pitcher or number 1, I guess, I would feel better about that for sure.
All right. Well, the draft is in the books again. That was our 12-team head-to-head categories draft. Let us know in the comments who won the draft. And of course, we'll check back in to find out who got the most votes. We're going to wrap there for Scott and Chris. I am Frank. Thanks as always for tuning in to Fantasy Baseball Today. Please make sure to follow and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify. And we'll be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.